Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
Puesto Enrico here. Puesto de Taquiendo de Femiose de Peopleoples. And the last couple of days, I have watched all 6 seasons of BoJack Horseman. Hello, Octavio Silva.
Hey, Octavia Silva. Good to see you. As always.
First, let me say that show, it's almost written for me. It's like the main character's 50-year-old dude who is an alcoholic. He's got a mom with dementia. But it's like I can't even conceive of there being a show that more expertly and completely weaves in together like humor and meaning. Well, BoJack Horseman himself, I think, is an INFJ. Recently, I've been talking about that. And
Type 7.
Type 7, though. You can see the Type 7 is something that I definitely identify with him. Of course, I'm like, one nice thing about BoJack Horseman, watching it from my perspective, the thing is, it links to me specifically so much, in part because of a generational thing. It's written by Gen Xers. It's written by the people that I wasn't successful enough to become. It's like, and on some level, that show is bound to engender a certain amount of hating in me, or jealousy as well, because it's like, I've said before about Rick and Morty, it's like they're following me around. Well, same thing with this show, except this show is simply better than Rick and Morty. BoJack Horseman is deeper, better, more sophisticated, and it's just I hear Rachel was saying that he's typed by NTP by a lot of people.
Yeah.
The NTP in the show.
He's not.
The NTP in the show is Diane. She's the NTP. She's an INTP.
Okay, I want to tell you people, he's such a good example of an INFJ 7 and Type 7 period. Like, if I had no guidance in my life, like at all, or like there was love in my family. There was never question of that. So like, if I didn't have that, I fucking totally would have gone on benders and shit and stuff, and like,
and treated people badly.
Oh, hell yeah. So it's a really good example of a Type 7 INFJ who just he needs help throughout it. It's a good show.
And then you got Princess Caroline is like ESTJ.
And I think she's a good example of the 3.
Or 2, actually.
Maybe 3 ring 2.
I think
she's so
2.
Success driven.
Well, it's interesting. You never really see her being super concerned about actually displaying any of her success or wealth.
That's true.
She's more always trying to figure out how to win.
Yeah.
She's a little different,
She's always boosting BoJack up, even when he's like at his lowest, She's always like, I got this deal for you. It's like blah, 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 blah.
All right, well, I mean, this is the thing about ENTJ. I don't think she's ENTJ because
she has a whole sequence with her backstory.
Right. And additionally, there's something kind of anti-polar about her, right? Like,
I forget what seed it was. I'm embarrassed by my. No, Diane is not.
Diane's not an INFJ.
She's not.
No, she's an INTP. Well, the shows are written by the same kind of people, right? But I mean, look, if you're gonna mistype Princess Caroline, you're going to mistype her as ENTJ.
Yeah.
If you're gonna mistype BoJack, you're gonna mistype him as ENTP.
ENTP. Yeah.
If you're gonna mistype Diana, though, it's like, why you type Diana or Diane as an INFJ? I do not know. I get the mistypings on BoJack and Princess Caroline because they're the most obvious wrong answers.
Right.
But INFJ for Diane, really? There's nothing INFJ about her at all.
I watched the show before Eric did, and I always thought that she was a good example of an INTP female. And
you know, in the show, of course, you see her INTP qualities very clearly. But of course, the show has to always, a perfect example of her being an INTP is when she reads her perspective title to the bison, and it's so long. He's like, it's so long and intricate and complicated, and he's like, save some for the inside, right? and
they also reference Daria, like as a little
right.
like
Vietnamese
nudge
Daria
at himself. Like, Vietnamese Daria, they call her. And Daria is typed as an INTP, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, she is. She looks exactly like her.
Well, I mean, the thing is this. The show is very smart for getting out in front of any possible critiques, but I have a theory about something that so, like, I'm not exactly sure who's the primary writers behind it, but I'm confident Amy Sedaris is a big contributing writer to the thing. When now she's an ENTP.
Who's an ENTP?
Amy Sedaris.
Yeah, she is, but yes. Yes, she is. I love Amy Sedaris. She's one of the people, I told you this before. I know I've told you this before, and I don't mean to say it again, but when I was on Instagram like 2 years ago, she liked one of my posts, and it just like made my day.
Who liked it?
Amy Sedaris.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it made my day.
I bet, I gotta say, it's like that show is okay. The last time I felt like something was this resonant with me, now there've been other things that resonate with me on a humor level, like for this show as well as for like Rick and Morty and Deadpool. I've encountered a couple of things where I'm like, what, are they following me around stealing my jokes? I can't name an exact example for Lawnmower. That's just your own insecurity making you not like her, because you got this weird sort of, you aligned your ontology with anti-feminism shit. She was not annoying at all. She was an INTP.
Oh, by the way, by accident, I broke that glass vase.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
I would have wondered where it was at some point, probably. So here's an example of something that I bet Amy Sedaris thinks, but is probably thinking also she thinks is worried needlessly about it. But in fact, it wasn't needless because I picked up on it, which is I'm convinced that if Amy Sedaris had a chance to do something different in that show, at some point near the end of the show, she'd make a joke that's referential to within the show about their overuse of the word titular. Just to make sure that the audience was aware that they were aware they were using that word so much. But they're not aware. They weren't aware when they did it, but she's aware of it now. I bet she's aware of the fact that they use the word titular too much in that show, or like too many times. Lon Moore says, blue-haired chick is annoying. Any man that disagrees is cucked. Okay. Well, as somebody who has in general sort of like cooking sensitivity, I understand where cooking sensitivity has its justifications to be like, hey, don't emasculate people is a fine thing to say. Can you have a conversation now? And you want to?
The thing is, her background story is so great too. I mean, she's the Vietnamese girl of like probably ESTP. I would think that like an ESTP would be punchy, you know.
Look, I want to explain this one more. It was you could correctly say it was a low blow if I were doing some sort of attack on you. I'm not attacking you. I have my own insecurities too. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like when I say your dislike of the blue-haired chick is annoying. Any man that disagrees is cucked. Or before you even said that, they just generally think that she's annoying. What you're really doing is conflating your security things with some expression. Now it's like we watched this episode of Sex and the City the other night, and last night I guess.
Yeah.
And it was quite upsetting to me.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way the men were being emasculated in the show, and I found it offensive.
I'm nodding my head.
And the reason is because there's a huge difference between something that's presented in a nuanced way, like BoJack Horseman, and something that's genuinely guilty of what you're saying. So don't get me wrong. The thing is, my condemnation of Sex and the City, that episode, for that messaging that it had in there, basically implicit to it, was totally justified.
Yeah, totally.
But my strong response to it was based on my own insecurities or whatever.
That happens to me too.
I mean, mostly. Another thing is, what I'm saying here is not to condemn you for being insecure, but to point out that in this instance, to say that, look, aesthetically, BoJack Horseman is entirely successful. Like it literally made zero mistakes, except maybe using the word titular a couple times too often.
So funny, I didn't even notice that.
But so you're gonna have to trust me when I say that any sort of dislike of that character is not implicit to that character. She's right on the money about most things. There's moments where I am annoyed by her politics a little bit as well, but even there, the show doesn't make any mistakes in other words, it doesn't make any arguments really either way that are, you could say, are comprise anything offensive, essentially. To the extent that there's anything offensive going on, it's not that she's being monolithic about feminism and stuff. In fact, she's understanding it is it's an incredibly complicated, nuanced thing as she gets later on through the show.
They don't glorify any of the characters. Like, even Mr. Peanut Butter, who's supposed to be the most likable character, like, he has his shit that he finally, like, deals with too. So it's like, none of them are put on a pedestal. There's no, like, glory child of BoJack. They all kind of have this history, and they're all kind of, like, misshapen characters.
Todd's kind of the only one who's fully...
Well, he's fully realized in his simplicity
because he doesn't take responsibility for himself on some level, right?
Right.
So why do I got to say it's because of my own insecurity? Well, I mean, look, no, I'm not saying that's why I dislike that episode of Sex and the City. In fact, I quite distinctly did not say that. I said that it was objectively bad and deserving of outrage. Okay. I'm saying that the reason that I care about that thing and it outrages me specifically is because of stuff that areas of insecurity. Now, look, insecurity is a term that usually is used very negatively. It doesn't need to be understood that way. Everybody has areas of security, areas of insecurity.
Yeah.
For example, FI polar means it's my place of least resistance.
Yes. And I realized that when we were watching that, and he wanted to watch it, I did not show it to him. Somehow when Lawnmower speaks, it always goes into a negative, like, way, and I want to actually say that to you, Lawnmower. You have a way of bringing things down to a level of meh. So I want to thank you for that.
Look,
didn't watch. Did you watch the whole show?
It doesn't matter. Listen, Lawnmower. The thing is, the bottom line is this: aesthetically, there are accurate perceptions and inaccurate perceptions. So aesthetically, we can say that it is accurate to condemn Sex and the City's episode in that instance because it
was not good representation.
Well, yeah, let me just finish though, Rachel. Because it objectively didn't deal with it in a nuanced way.
No.
It treated some of the people in the story as though they weren't really people. Okay,
exactly.
And what that means is some of the people didn't get their considerations internalized into the narrative as a whole. In other words, what's that red-haired chick in the show? The short Miranda, her man gets like treated like a little bitch in the show by her, and he it's sort of presented as he's a good guy for just sort of rolling with it.
Mm-hmm.
It was offensive, right? That's nothing like the kind of objection one might have against Diane in that show. She is not unnuanced in her engagement with other people. You're politicizing something that ought not be politicized, which suggests that it's not because of a genuine or objectively correct aesthetic determination or argumentation determination. It's because you see an association between her and stuff you don't like.
Exactly.
It's an area of insecurity. Now that's not a condemnation of you. We all have areas of insecurity. And that's a very, very common one. For most people, an area of insecurity is going to be sort of sexual economy.
Yeah,
stuff.
like I have a feeling you didn't even see the whole show, which doesn't even matter because even if you did and you didn't like her, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it. It's just that, like, what do you like?
All right, so Yetzra Mahel, SINEXS is aesthetically subjective. You are correct about that. SI is aesthetically subjective because it's a knowledge function, so it knows things. Whereas NE is not a knowledge function, so it doesn't know things. Actual question. I like when you were rolling with security and security thing. Were you moving toward a cognitive function association with where those areas lie? Yeah, I was sort of moving towards that.
Cool. I'm into that.
David, hold on. Let me go talk to homie. So, Lawnmower, you immediately got me having to defend something to which you're subjecting unfair attack and legitimizing the point that you don't like. What's interesting is the same thing happened with not necessarily with you, but the same thing happened with that show. What was it called? What was that show called?
Lucifer.
No.
Oh.
That show with Harley Quinn, the cartoon Harley Quinn. So Harley Quinn is a brilliant show. It was brilliant start to finish, and it was especially brilliant in the way that it anticipated and made joke out of the no-win situation that kind of perspective is going to bring to it. Like, this is shitty because it's feminist. Before anybody watches it, there's this is shitty because it's feminist camp, right? Who wants to allow their politics or their perceptions of political groups to influence their aesthetic decision. This is the key thing I'm trying to get across here. I'm not politicizing your honest comment. I'm talking about the objectivity of aesthetics versus politics, right? They're different things.
You're doing a good job of it.
Thanks.
Opinion.
Sorry.
All right, I'm ready to talk to you now.
Right.
So what's going on?
So I just wanted to have a conversation about the scheduled or unscheduled event currently with you and Matt.
Okay. Well, we're currently live streaming, right?
Okay.
All right, just so you know you're on the air or whatever.
Right. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So basically, you saved the timer thing. You have the link or something, or
no, I don't have the link anymore. I don't know.
Oh well, I mean, it doesn't really matter because you can still check the email and go back to it, I guess, unless you have a lot of email, in which case you have to kind of.
I can find it. So, well, but just fill me on what you want to do differently as first format, or what your thoughts are, or what matter you want to resolve here in this conversation.
Well, I think that it should still carry off from the last conversation, but I definitely think there needs to be some sort of resolution. So I would say that the resolution would be is metaphysical thinking predicated or equivalent to magical thinking might be a good one.
Okay. I mean, I think that skews neg. It asks the after establishing equivalency, which is rather than a prescription. So I guess there's a prescriptive thing in it inherently, but in general, let me see. It's generally good to have some sort of agent or limiter in the thing, like a just person, like justice links to metaphysicality or something, like in that sense, like an individual is more likely to be just if they're metaphysical or something like that. Now that's a really strangely compelling and interesting topic. The problem is the metaphysical types have an advantage in winning the argument, of course, because that's being adjudicated on their ground. But well, it's because it's both. It's like, if you got a powerful adversarial advocate, then it doesn't really matter. That might be interesting, but yeah, I could go with your topic if you want. The problem is, if we go with a topic like that, then you're taking the ground debate on something and turning it into the whole debate. You're saying this should be defined as this, versus saying like we ought to which requires the framework debate to be separate from the contention level debate. But I mean, you just got to think about how the resolution skews, which is to say, is it fair to both sides? Is it easier for one side or the other? And you got to think about basically what's the scope of the debate going to incorporate? Because you could debate a topic like the neg is a better debater than the af. That's a really interesting topic, right? But it's not. You're purely then getting debate skills without reasoning skills, without any link to empirics at all. And so the thing is, it might be worthwhile to include something that could incorporate empirics, because then you get more than just a definitional debate.
Yeah. I don't see how we can do that and yet carry off from the last discussion, because I mean, we can talk about something other than like religion specifically, but I feel like we should do that actually. But
why should we carry on from the last conversation, the last debate, quote unquote, which was a disaster?
Right. Well, that's basically what Matt wants.
Okay. Well, it's a new round. Then he wants to have a rematch of that same topic. Fine. Then we just need to coordinate it into a meaningful resolution. So Xavier reads, Matt Slick, I don't believe is who he's talking about, but
I've heard of Matt Slick. I think he's on Discord, right? He's like a apologetic of some sort.
Well, that's what format allows. Format and a judge, Xavier Reeds, makes it irrelevant whether you get anything out of him, because the outcome of the round will be determinate one way or the other. So okay, well then,
Let me pull this up.
So I just want to say that I think that Diane was a good representation of INTP females, especially when they are going through stuff that happens in life.
I don't think she's supposed to be the moral compass.
No, she's not.
In fact, she learns throughout the show what the folly of her presuming to be the moral compass. I don't think you watched the show very carefully.
I don't think so.
Or understood it very well.
Did you see all 6 seasons? Because no one's supposed to be the moral compass. You as the viewer are supposed to be. Yeah, email Anthrax.
Do you need good SE to do good website design, particularly aesthetics and user experience? That would seem to be more TE than SE. The fact that you asked that question suggests you might be an INFP or INTP. Okay, so anyway, regarding the resolution then, I would say that we should have the debate that we failed to have last time, which is...
so do you want to try to figure it out as you go along, define it?
No, we need to have the resolution set up ahead of time so we know what we're debating.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not debating something specific and your ground will constantly shift. That's why resolutions have to be set, established, and referenced in the round, and things have to be topical. That's why topicality is an argument. If I say it's a good idea for us to plant trees on Main Street, the reason we have something like that as a resolution is because it prevents you from suddenly arguing that it's a good idea to plant trees in the park, and that's why we should plant trees on Main Street. It allows us to limit the ground and prevents shifting ground when we have a resolution. So the resolution would need to be something like his position that we were actually arguing, if he wants to argue this, he'd be the AF, I guess, would be that faith requires rationale.
I don't necessarily agree that that's a position he holds, but
that's what we ended up arguing last time. He objected to me saying I don't have any reasons for my faith. I don't justify my faith with reasons. He objected to that by saying there are good reasons for faith. I said, no, there aren't good reasons for faith, because faith is a definitionally belief in the absence of faith, in the absence of evidence, or in the face of contrary evidence. That's what it is definitionally. So I pointed out that no, you don't need to have good reason to have faith. In fact, quite the contrary. It's exclusive of faith. And he wanted to argue that point down to the nth degree. That's what actually fucking happened in the round. He didn't want to accept my thing that said my faith-based behavior is not justified on advocacy-related rationale, and that I think is an improper use of rhetoric in a frame that ultimately isn't well served by saying this fails to validate on rational levels by any party associated with it. Whether you're arguing in favor of God or against God, you are arguing. To argue God is to miss the point, is to make a fundamental category error. He didn't like that because it invalidates what he's doing as a way of responding to belief. So that's why he ended up arguing instead that I have to have reasons to believe in God.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the resolution could be that there are good reasons to believe in God. That would be the topic.
That's not. It couldn't be. No, that's a there are. See, again, you're trying to avoid an agent. You need an agent in there. One ought to believe. Man. Something like that, right? We need some sort of prescriptive statement if you're gonna make a good resolution. Otherwise, you're gonna just end up having endless shifting ground or only a ground debate. There are good reasons. Well, the AF's gonna win that instantly. Well, sure, there are reasons. There are plenty of reasons. Are they good? Well, you can argue that they're good from lots of different frames of reference. It's hard to argue that they're inherently bad. So just saying that they're not good means the neg has no impacts. So the thing is, here's the issue you're going to have. It's as simple as this. people think they want to debate, but they don't want to debate. They want to push people around verbally. Real debate requires people to not try to dissemble and So if Matt were to take the same approach in response to my questions in a debate round where we have a cross-examination and he gives me the answers and I have a speech, I can articulate why these answers are inadequate. We ought to justify our faith in God with logical reasons. Evelyn's asked this resolution is perfect. That's a perfect resolution. We ought to justify our faith in God with logical reasons.
That's the beginning of the debate.
That's what we debated last time. Whether we got to that point or not. We didn't because he was assembling instead of working.
What type do you think is most likely to
All
be
right,
a
so I'm going to
artist?
find his email, and I think we should do the event on next month on the weekend, either like 3rd or the 4th, or something like that.
That should be fine.
If you have the time.
Yeah.
Because he's hosting an event on the weekend.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, just follow up. Probably. I'll go through my email probably. I did answer some emails the other day.
I'm going to send you his email if I can find it.
Okay, cool.
Is it?
I keep track and I delete all the junk.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy.
You're welcome.
So, one thing I think is cool about this, and I appreciate you including me in these conversations and tolerating my own sort of meowiness about it, is that these are important. This is an important conversation. What does it mean to engage in discourse meaningfully about something on the internet? And what does it require to? Because without some sort of a frame of reference by which we can understand the events of discourse, then it's like doomed to forever be just an FE thing.
All right. I got the emails. I'll post it.
Okay, cool.
Right now.
All right, so I'll follow up with you later about that, or whatever. Yeah, whatever date's fine. I mean, I'll just give me the date and time, and I'll just put it in my calendar, and I'll do that.
What type is most likely to be a makeup artist?
Probably ESFP.
Like, darling, I sleep in my makeup because I am my makeup.
Well, I mean, you've got a few different possibilities there. So because chicks, even though makeup is not, now tell him I did his mom last night, Eric. Whose mom did you do last night? It's like girls, they're into makeup even if they're thinking types. It's not a feeling thing. Like makeup, even though you might think, well, makeup, that's not a logical thing. It's a feeling thing. It's kind of like sports and guys. It seems like guys are all into sports regardless of what type they are. I like sports.
I like sports too, but I grew up with sports. You think SI doms are more inclined to watch sports despite sex?
SI doms are more likely to say, I don't want to have sex right now because I'm watching sports. Is that what you're saying?
No, like more likely because like I watched a lot. My dad liked sports, but I didn't like watching them with him. I liked watching sports with my grandma, La Pelosa. Yeah, she liked the Yankees and the Jets. They were always on. And then tennis, if it was on, sometimes always the Olympics. The ISFJ.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dave Sanderson, what do you think about all this debate stuff? You're the one who's actually doing things and making shit happen, which is the rarest skill of all around here. What do you think about it all?
I'm hoping it'll go well, but there was a reason I made the debate timer because I felt like the last one, of course, is obviously a train wreck and is something that we don't want to repeat. So, it was sort of a way to make it feel sort of informal because you get to decide how much time you get to debate, but at the same time, it restricts people's amount of time to debate. So each person only gets 1 hour each. So that was the idea.
Cool. Email Anthrax says, I would never say I don't want sex with you because I'm watching sports. I'd more likely say I don't want to have sex with you because I find you unattractive. Emailed Anthrax, you big meanie. You would not say that. Anyway, the point is, you're not saying you don't want to have sex with somebody or want to have sex with somebody in general. Like, yes, I would like to have sex with you, except I'm watching sports right now. So I don't want to have sex with you in general. We're saying you presumably already are having sex with that person, and do you want to have sex with them at that moment, or do you want to continue watching sports? Well, both Rachel and I think prefer to finish watching what we're watching. I don't really like the whole things get hot and heavy in the middle of something we're watching. It doesn't really happen.
No, it doesn't. Can I just say that Oliver Linehan says difference between sports and makeup is there are a lot more girls who are into sports than guys who are into makeup. I would disagree. Are you totally forgetting so many groups?
Well, what's that guy's name that
Jeffree Star?
The guy that I got busted for FI people for type policing too harshly, even though it was huge.
Something Pierre XO?
Pierre XO, yeah. It's like, okay, I guess famous people are people too. God.
So I'm a James Charles exactly Oliver Linehan, and if I'm doing the accent wrong, it's because I'm just like Raul Diego. I just don't know what type I am. It changes every day, but I never change my makeup. My makeup is myself, and that's why everyone buys my stuff, because I am my makeup.
What is modal logic? I'm not sure. Let me look it up.
And this is actually Maybelline Great Lash, lots of lashes, which Delilah recommended to me.
So I sent you the email. So
Okay, cool. I'll check it out. Is modal an expression that is used to qualify the truth of a judgment? A modal is an expression like necessarily or possibility that is used to qualify the truth of a judgment. So it's basically in regular logic, we use quantifiers such as all, no, or only, rather than qualifiers such as necessarily or possibly change. So in all instances of logic that uses quantifiers instead of qualifiers, you have the same qualifier, which is necessarily. One way or the other, every conditionality is saying it's valid if, in fact, the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises, and it's invalid if it doesn't. Whereas in modal logic, they talk about more than just necessarily and that's it. So it's necessary, possible, obligatory, permitted, forbidden. It will always be the case that it will be the case that it has always been the case that it was the case that, or doxastic logic, which is X believes that. So I guess doxastic logic tries to remove the truth from the statement and ascribe it to the agent, which is a smart notion. This is interesting. I'm glad you brought this up. It's kind of similar to what's called okay. So in conditional logic, there are we don't typically account for the possibilities of some, right? We just have all, only, and no. But if there's the next branch of conditional logic after normal conditional logic is the addresses it sort of bridges this area by bringing in some, and the way it does that is with an universal instantiation and universal existentiality. And anyway, there are two new rules of inference that are added to the 16 rules of inference, and that's all it requires to have an additionally incorporate some into regular conditional logic. Additionally, you can by changing the variables, you can make sentences that use some refer to time. So it's like there are multiple ways of working around this. Paraconsistent logic, please. What's paraconsistent? I don't know what that means.
For any females who are in the stream, if you are using mascara and you don't hit the insides of your nose, like with the wand, you're not getting close enough to the ends. Just like get close to it and then it'll make a dot, but it's totally worth it. And like then you just wipe off the dot when it's done, but it's really worth it because it gets the tiny, it's just like it makes it more fluttery.
Yeah. Inconsistency tolerance is what paraconsistency is about. I guess it's consistency between consistent pseudo-logic. I don't think it rejects the law of non-contradiction. I think it says a successful logic has a means of dealing with contradictions that doesn't destroy its ability to meaningfully work. So if you're basing a system like coding, for example, just purely on conditional logic, which I doubt it is anymore, but at some point, on some machine code level it breaks down to conditional logic, then small errors of code become systemic very quickly. In other words, you get the butterfly effect. But if you have a better kind of logic, then it incorporates a system of dealing with those inconsistencies. So it's a negative feedback loop rather than a positive feedback loop.
Want to know how much an INFJ feels? It's not gonna be what you think. So like I knew that I had to cry because I was feeling tension in my hips. SE tip with Rachel.
So I get what you're saying, Colby Megara, but it's better to say, rather than rejecting non-contradiction, is that it includes some sort of systemic element to deal with contradictions such that they don't collapse the system or explode, as Xavier Reed says here. That's a term that they use in that, I guess, and I can see why. It's a great term, because ultimately explosion means the disintegration of a singular whole. And what makes something a singular whole? Like if you have an engine that goes, makes your car go, and you take out like the carburetor, one piece, the carburetor or something, then obviously it's not going to work at all anymore. It's going to work pretty well still. You need the whole thing. So in that regard, you're seeing something where either the whole thing works as it's supposed to, and it has little capacity to handle small problems with it. Now, a good car, cars that are well made, will have some sort of redundancies built in so that small things can break without the whole system falling apart. But like people, for example, if people didn't have this paraconsistency quality, then we wouldn't be able to survive small cuts. And we need to have this self-reparative mechanism. Our bodily integrity is violated every time we cut ourselves or scratch ourselves. But that doesn't unravel us eventually. In other words, I don't keep picking at it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until finally I'm just all open sore and then I die, which would happen if we didn't have any healing end of things.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Was me feeling tension in my hips and SI thing more than the SE.
Yeah, that's SI.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, knowing that you feel a tension in your hips is an SI thing.
Yeah.
Why do you think you felt it in your hips?
Because I did feel it in my hips.
No, I know, but I'm saying why, like,
tightness.
If you're gonna feel tension somewhere, normally people say like they feel it in their neck or their shoulders, or
yeah.
So I wonder why it is you feel it in your hips.
I actually think because I haven't been riding or walking. There were a couple of times where I thought about taking my bike for a ride, but my tires, when camera comes over,
Right.
and I just need to be more on top of myself with yoga too. Yoga does really help me a lot, like doing child's pose and stuff. They call them hip openers. This time, for some reason, I just felt it in my hips.
Colby Magara says contradictions don't exist in reality; they can't by their very nature. Well, you're right. Of course, what we call contradiction refers to something that exists on the mapping side of things, not on the territory side of things. That doesn't mean that contradictions don't exist. It means they're a metaphysical rather than a physical consideration. In other words, it's a failure of language, not of reality. So that's true for sure. But it's not a fail-safe, Colby. It's a systemic element that accomplishes the. Because look, there's some quality. The natural quality of entropy is to unravel. To unravel that which is orderly into that which is disorderly. So, like I was saying, the human body is an example of something that has system integrity and bodily integrity, which is to say it's got a distinct identity in space and it's got a distinct identity in time or metaphysically.
I'm coming, baby.
So then the same thing is true for symbolic systems, though. They can have the kind of robustness that a human body does in terms of their bodily integrity, quote unquote, or their system integrity, so that small errors don't end up interacting with the system by a positive feedback loop. It's going to have to be an architectural difference. It's not sufficient to say it's a fail-safe. That would imply that it's some sort of, okay, if when shit goes bad, do this. It's got to be built in systemically, architecturally, to make it such that it resists that explosion quality. You were typed by Cloud as an INTP? Wow, diamond. You might as well just go to randomtypologyresult.com.
That's very good title, babe.
Mm-hmm.
Nice NE.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So,
yeah, I get mixed up with SE and SI all the time.
Eric, can you explain why FI is not a knowledge function? Well, it's experiential and it draws conclusions about things. And those conclusions, they more represent, you might say like, well, okay, once you've drawn a conclusion about something, it goes into your knowledge area. But the reality is there are certain things that we view in life as in dispute and certain things that are not in dispute.
Can I just say,
mm-hmm.
I want to say that so BoJack at like AA and stuff too, that was so fucking me as well. Like fucking listen to everyone's stories and shit. Like I would go into them and I would be like sitting like that. And like, yeah, like for like the stuff that I was ashamed for, I really was.
Hey, he finally gets fed up and realizes you see that he's been listening to everybody the whole time, obviously, because he's able to tear each of them apart.
It's so cringe. Oh my god.
So let me continue answering Queen of Vegas's question though. So you might say TI. I mean, the thing is, TI, SI, NI, FI are all part of your, in general, epistemology functions, which is to say, they're how you decide and know. And epistemology is the study of knowledge and belief. What comprises knowledge, what comprises belief, etc., which comprises truth or falsehood or whatever. So yeah, Xavier reads, it's an action type thing, generally speaking. SE and NE DOMs both, but especially the TI types. So the reason FI is not a knowledge function is because it tells you to some extent what you've decided about something, but it's also how you decide. So for example, the reason you can tell FI is not a knowledge function is because, like last night, I found something kind of triggery that made me feel like hurt feelings and stuff, but it told me nothing about what the meaning of the thing was or its status or anything. It just told me how I felt right then. And if I were to draw conclusions, knowledge-based conclusions, or sort of conclusions to put into knowledge from those feelings, they'd be the wrong conclusions. Because I might feel hurt feelings towards Rachel, even though she didn't do anything, it's just sort of projection. And that's why it's not a knowledge function, it's a deciding function. So it's telling me to decide, but I mean, here's the thing about this question, Email Anthrax. Email Anthrax asked, does everybody here believe in typology? Here's the problem. Here's why typology is so like sucks you in and starts to control your frame. Is because the only meaningful way to explain people's differences that seems to actually work as a way of explaining things in general is through attentional manners. When people, and the thing is, I've never heard anybody successfully negate cognitive functions. Everybody negates MBTI and letter dichotomies. Nobody's negated cognitive functions except as a general thing, like without actually addressing any of the warrants. Do I think BoJack's an ENTP? No, INFJ, I think.
No, see, I told you. A lot of people thought he was an ENTP.
Yeah, he's not. Like, and I gotta say, BoJack Horseman is not a much better. I mean, I don't want to diminish. The fact is, Rick and Morty is a really good show. It's funny, it's smart, it's hilarious. But the fact is, BoJack Horseman is a much deeper, more just sort of it says so much so intelligently, it's insane. So people's negation for typology is it's pseudoscience, nothing substantial beyond that. And Colby says, I believe that it's arrogant to think that all these very intelligent psychologists don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I would love to hear those very intelligent psychologists, negate what we're saying about cognitive functions, what I'm saying about cognitive functions. The fact that people pay attention in different ways, that there's a difference between deciding something and knowing something. There's a difference between doing something and interfacing with something. In other words, taking action which create impacts versus interacting with a system that's dynamic. So the fact that there are dynamic systems and static systems, indisputable, not in any dispute, right? The fact that there are physicalities and abstractions, not in any meaningful dispute. But the thing is, to accurately describe a human being's relationship with those things seems to require us to pay attention to how people pay attention. So your skepticism here is indicative of something, right? I want to point something out here. There are different ways you could pay attention to it, Colby. So you could say, I believe it's arrogant of the psychological community to discount cognitive functions without negating the actual arguments. That would be a TI frame of reference. You could say it's arrogant to think that all these very intelligent psychologists don't know what they're talking about, in which case that's likely to be an FE frame of reference. You could say it's arrogant to think that you would know as much as these experts, Eric, which is slightly different frame of reference. Is going to be TE. So whether you're FE or TE is kind of hard to tell. Are you actually that type, or are you just making that kind of argument? Regardless, if we want to taxonomy the argument, the words themselves correctly, we need to have these kind of attentional. We need to make these distinctions because they exist in reality. Is this what is your warrant here? There are 8 different distinct kinds of warrants, and you really can't divide any. No matter how many different warrants you see in the world, they will fall into one of these 8 categories. In this case, it's an FE category, but it also happens to be the way, sort of, that TE people default to because they're interacting with the social system. So they end up doing things that resonate on that FE plane. Yes. But there are different kinds of justifications. You could say, I think it's dumb to apply cognitive functions because they don't have any precisely defined utility. You could say that it's dumb to think of cognitive functions because they don't link to any specific empirics. That would be a more concretely TE frame. So, I mean, your frame's more FE. Now, this is a meaningful taxonomy of frames, at least. Another possible frame is you could say it's too singular an explanation that, in fact, reality isn't subject to those kind of singular explanations. Now, if you were to do that, you'd be using an NI frame. Okay, you lead with TE, but I understand through experience that most people don't respond well to TE, so I changed the way I phrase things. Okay, but you'll note, what did attentional manners allow me to do? It allowed me to parse what you're saying without condemning it. I'm not saying, even though I think it's dumb, quote unquote, to make decisions that way, right? Why do I think it's dumb to make decisions that way? Because you are making your decisions by ignoring TI, which is to say, you ignore the fact that some people are really good at figuring out whether the arguments are legitimate by themselves, better than anybody else who they read, you know? The reason I'm able to understand that you're approaching this through a different manner that's different but equal to mine, is because of cognitive functions. That it's okay. This is another frame of reference. The reason TI people get so upset about that kind of thing is we're making arguments in an advocacy system, which ideally would be adjudicated using a TI attentional manner, but it's not. And so, the reason that there's a lot of conflict is because only some people are naturally set up to do well in some things. For example, I'm naturally set up to be right about, statements, but you're naturally set up to be effective in the world. Now, you can't have both. But the problem is cognitive functions has allowed me to recognize this fact that I'm never going to be as effective as you, but I'll always be more right than you. Or not always, but most of the time. Okay?
That's why we have perfect hair.
But I'm talking to this other.
I know.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's TE, right?
I know he is.
So the thing is, what you need to remember is that to be correct, I've chosen to be correct, right? Because I value correctness, at least to some extent, instrumentally. To you, it's basically irrelevant. You may validate correctness when you can establish it, but you don't put any responsibility on yourself to establish correctness. So it's probably not really relevant to you that my position is more correct. And I don't know if that's going to be determinant in whether or not you adopt a given position, right? Well, I mean, that's an SI frame. So if that is the case, Colby, that the reason you are the way you are is because she taught you to be that way, and that would be an SI frame of reference, which still affords us a good understanding of why we prefer this frame of reference, because it allows us to meaningfully parse out everybody else's frame of reference. Hi, Hambone.
Hey, Hambone. How you doing? It's good to see you. And I want everyone to know that even though I'm off screen, I totally agree with everything you're saying.
Thanks, darling.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Then why does he speak on a platform like he is on one? Who? I don't know who you're talking about or what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You're correct. Anthropologically, that stems from a certain shift in the mode of linguistics we've now entitled the declarative or the propositional. No, what he's saying is not trusting the established facts, but rather I'm saying specifically he's making the argument that the way he is right now is because of what he learned in the past or what was modeled to him. That would be an SI frame of reference to explain why he's making the argument he's making. So you could, the argument that I'm making is an NI frame of reference. He's appealing to the particularist to explain his deviation from a universal. Why do you speak on a platform like you have the credentials to do this? Oh, why do I speak on a platform? I see. Because I'm better at their job than they are. I'm quite confident in that. The thing is, you might that's okay. So look, there's two possible frames. Let me explain how this works. By Octavio Silva is that there's a couple different possible frames of reference in response to this, right? So I could do the FE thing and say, look, I never claimed to be a psychologist. I'm not claiming to have any particular specialized knowledge, except I've studied typology a lot. I'm a typologist. I could do that shit, right? I could take that approach. That'd be a much more FE approach, and it would be probably a more effective approach than the approach I'm taking. The truth is that you're right. The truth is that psychology is divided into different areas of psychology. There's theoretical psychology, there's research psychology, and there's therapeutic psychology, right? So the thing is, the reason I talk about the research end of psychology or the theory end of psychology and feel as though I'm better at it than those who are experts purportedly at it or have credentials is because I actually am.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
He is. And I actually had a course in high school on psychology taught by an INFP. I had a course in college, beginners, Psych 101. And I got tested in an INFJ, and then my teacher didn't believe me. And then I took boundless tests online to find out my type, and Eric is the only one who's ever gotten it right. Or even come close and then gotten it right. Like, seriously. Those cognitive functions really do count for something.
Is it conceivable that an evolution of humans could be produced by genetic mutations that changes what their capabilities are? No. The reason that's not possible is because a species is a self-replicating genome, and it has a certain amount of adaptability or elasticity to it, so you can get variation within a species, but you can't change the fundamental nature of a species. I think the fundamental nature of a conscious being is to attend via this act you're talking about. If I were to be a lot more FE, then I'd have to be a lot less extrovertedly intuitive, because I can't. Each extroverted function requires an introverted function as its pair mate to work properly.
Chris Chapin, I'm not actually sure what type the second teacher was. I took psych. I had a class in high school for psych, and she was an INFP, and she only taught about INFP. And then in college at university, I had Psych 101. I don't know what the teacher was, but she didn't like me. And I know we took a personality test because she gave it to us, and she didn't believe my results. I was like, why would I make this up?
So okay, I understand what you're saying, Colby Megara. It's reasonable for you to feel this way because you use a heuristic by and large in determining things that it's much more efficient rather than you reading a bunch of stuff and figuring out what's right or not right yourself based on the logic of it or something. It's reasonable of you to delegate certain aspects of that kind of decision making to people who are experts in that area. The thing about psychology is it's very much subject to all sorts of critique precisely because it wants to validate itself on hard science empirics grounds so much that it tries to eliminate what fundamentally is going to be necessarily, which is to some extent a philosophy. And philosophy is not the sort of thing that requires expertise. It requires the right kind of brain. Now, additionally, and here's another thing, an element of sort of credentials that I bring to the table, is I am a professional debate coach with a long career of reading and looking into all different kinds of arguments to make. Especially, I like psychological arguments because they're usually systemic or mechanistic rather than just single impact. So it's like, if I can show that the reason we shouldn't do this is because it harms people by shifting their locus of control from external to internal, from internal to external, for example, and that's a negative thing, then I can attain systemic impacts from it, right? Anyway, the bottom line is, because I've been a debate coach, my whole career has been devoted towards figuring out what's wrong with someone else's argument and figuring out which argument is the most bulletproof. So since fundamentally a psychological model of human consciousness is going to be primarily made out of mapping skills, what we don't need is a reductive attempt to render personality more concretely into metaphor, which is what the big five is, because people don't have attributes, right? That's a third party describing their affect. It's a fundamental mistake in psychology to not take into account the fact that there are basically three frames of reference in terms of subject, object. There's also observer, So, email anthrax. The reason I ignored your argument specifically was, first of all, I don't think you actually think that. You're just playing. Let's throw this out there. You said you claim to have knowledge that you have no credentials to back it up. You're sort of throwing me a softball to hit, I think. But the answer to that is, of course, I'm claiming to be an expert in something that requires you to be a certain way rather than for you to have learned a lot of stuff. Now, note here, Colby McGara, my dad is an ESTJ, a TE-DOM, who has a doctorate in philosophy. So the idea that you be a TE-DOM and not like philosophy, must not like philosophy, not true. Especially if you're TESI, then you're going to really get into learning things. The thing is, for a TE-DOM, philosophy is something you learn, not something you do. But for me, philosophy is something that I do, and it's something that objectively, realistically, if you were to compare what I'm doing with what other people are doing in general, you'd see that I do it very well. ESTJs are my favorite people to get into a heated argument with. So,
it's crisp outside.
Getting on into autumn.
Yeah.
Zaylen Black says, I don't believe MBTI socionics is firm in itself yet. We're at a cusp of discovery. Right. So it's like, it's going to take a while for what I'm saying to be sort of gain traction, especially in the face of so much misinformation, and especially given the fact that I'm doing this on YouTube rather than through some other modality, or that I don't have credentials as well. It's like if I were doing a psychology only channel, and I had some sort of letters after my name and had a tie on and was in an office, everybody would take me a lot more seriously, and it might gain more traction for what I'm saying. The correctness of what I'm saying is not relevant to any of that shit, though. And as a consequence, I don't give a fuck about it. I'm a 4 as well, So it's like my basic response to shame on you, Eric, or you're not good enough, Eric, or anything else is fuck off. It's not here, let me help. That word, I'm high achieving. It's fuck off. I'm doing what I want. Leave me alone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's a meme that has it's split into two, right? And the top half says 80s and 70s kids, and there's a person going like giving the middle finger, and then 90s and 1,000 kids pointing the finger like, you did it. I totally felt that. Totally.
Hambone, I'm sorry I've given you no attention.
Yes, I wanted to
heard
know
about your
what
car.
happened.
Oh, he had a bad day. He crashed the car at work.
Yeah, but like, what happened?
Did you run into a pole?
Yeah, like, was it a fender bender? What happened?
No, I am a 784, Oliver. What I'm saying is in the 2, 3, 4 area of the Enneagram, I'm a 4. I use tri-type, so I think I am a 7, I am an 8, and I'm a 4. In other words,
Yes.
I'm not a 1 or a 9, and I'm not a 2 or a 3.
Nope.
And I'm not a 5 or a 6.
Definitely not. He's definitely more of an 8 than a 4, and then he comes 4 after, for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm 784. It's
8,
like
definitely.
I mean, I could see it. I could see it. I see it happening in this very live stream, right? I started coming here to play, and then what happened? Lawnmower comes in and pisses me off.
Yep.
So I get mad because he's not letting me play like I want to play. I don't want to have an argument right now about this stupid shit. I'm trying to fanboy all over BoJack Horseman and Lawnmower shitting on Diana.
Yes.
So it's like I get mad, and then I'm like, okay, you know what? Fuck this. I'm gonna go talk to David Sanderson about something else. I'm just gonna do my own thing, and I don't even care what he said. And I don't even care about the public framer thing. Then I'm just gonna talk about something else.
That's Eric rolled up into a bow.
Scraped the side a bit, but the major issue is the bottom underneath the cabin. What did you run over something like a log or something? How are the fire? Are you near the fires? Okay, this is the problem. When you are the originator of the correct understanding of something, you can't be certified by anybody else but yourself. You backed into a concrete block in a very narrow parking garage. Well, Hambone, you know what I bet? You know what I bet? I bet, number one, that car has insurance.
Yep.
Number two, that the worst thing that's going to happen is you not really be encouraged to drive that car anymore, or those company cars anymore. Where you're encouraged to drive your own car. I don't know. It's not what really is bad. You just feel bad, right? Nothing bad's going to happen to you. You just feel bad about it. Well, yeah. The thing is, I had never seen it until the other day. I'd seen I thought I had seen like an episode of it or something, but I had never really watched it before. And
oh, P.P. Strauss, how
it's just eye-openingly genius across the board. For example, the incredible genius of the mulch joke. This joke that's split into 2 parts. I have never encountered such brilliant writing as that before. The incredible genius of the episode where he's just giving a funeral eulogy the whole time. Just absolutely genius. The dark episodes, the one stupid piece of shit, right? There's an episode called Stupid Piece of Shit where he spent the time talking, and you get to hear what's going on in his head. For one episode of the whole 6 seasons, you get to hear what's going on in his head. And what's he going on in his head? You stupid fucking piece of shit. You stupid piece of shit. He's like saying that to himself all day long, right? It totally resonates with me. Exactly when I was drinking, I used to wake up every morning and say, look, get up and dry heave in the bathroom, all hungover, and go, I wish I were dead. I wish I were dead. You stupid, worthless piece of shit. Yada, yada, yada. That was just my daily, all day, every day. Shame and anxiety, shame and anxiety.
That's that was totally.
I can be incorrect if my system is flawed. It means somebody needs to point out why it's flawed, and I'll correct it or nix it. If it, generally I catch these things myself before other people do because I'm more involved in the thing than other people. But it's absolutely susceptible to critique, and I've yet to be successfully critiqued on it. It's like nobody's come in and said, this actually, you've got a problem here. It doesn't make sense. That it ought to be this is what makes more sense. Yada, yada, yada. So the thing is, I'm not looking to defend my system in the way that some people might be, and nor am I looking to obfuscate the distinction between systems. Well, systems are systems, and different people have different systems. No, I'm claiming primacy. I'm saying it's open to public critique. If there could be a wiki on this, I would encourage it to be made. If there could be a code wiki that would help us to actually code this thing in terms of a simulation that we could then execute, that would be fantastic. I would love all those things to test, and then we're at the point in the system where you need to actually do a little bit of TE shit. It's like you need to realize there are dynamics to the system as well, that you can only do so much from no matter how expert you are a map maker, that you're going to have to adjust your map as you get down into the nitty gritty of the empirics and realize that this thing, though it made perfect sense logically, here's another explanation as you get more data. Fortunately, I have a fair amount of data because I type a fair amount of people.
Hambone, I just wonder. I mean, INTPs are SE polar, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Right. But but notice that what he's upset about it is because
I totally get
of the FE. He doesn't want to be the guy who crashes the cars all the time. Just like I didn't want to be the guy who crashes his bike all the time when I was a kid.
Oh.
But I was. Why? Well, I didn't want to be the guy who crashed his bike all the time as a kid, but I also didn't want to be the guy who wasn't reading a book while he was riding his bike. And
I can't do that.
And so that's why I crashed my bike all the time, because I was always thinking about other things, reading a book, distracted, or whatever. It's like, I want to be the best lover you ever had. You don't want to do that much work. No, you don't, Eric. You think you want that, but when you realize it entails a whole lot of work, you don't really want that. You know what I'm saying?
So, someone was saying that they're getting halfway through BoJack Horseman and want to know the types. We know that BoJack Horseman is an INFJ, Diane is INTP, ESTJ for Princess Caroline, right?
Did you say ISFP Todd?
ISFP Todd, yes, he's a good example of that. Here comes our ISFP right now.
Yeah, she's our ISFP, NP.
Yes. She would go on a kitty drone throne and fly up on. She'd be so like, the drone would scare her probably.
Yeah, so it's the thing is, the biggest problem I have with people objecting to cognitive functions is every time they try to describe something that I can describe in cognitive functions in some other way, it's more metaphysical and less meaningful. I mean, it's more metaphorical, I meant to say, and less meaningful. He rejects the principle of explosion, namely anything falls from contradiction. Well, I mean, Bubble Puppy, the thing is, that's we can falsify that in a second. All you got to do is show that adding the contradiction into some code causes the whole thing to fall apart. So, I mean, we do see that things do explode in those systems. What it seems to me it's more of a solution to that than it is a rejection of it. You think your dad was an ESTP? Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is like in that show, because the main character is my age.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that correlate. Like he's got this friend or ex-friend who he screwed over, whose name is Herb Katz, right? Something like that.
I don't remember.
Herb, and he's already dead because he got cancer and died young. BoJack's 50, still living like he's in his 20s, and having this sort of ontological crisis. So there's lots of reasons for it to be impactful of me, but it's like it's got two sort of meta impacts, which are, on the one hand, it makes me feel good because I realize that I'm rather far along in my moral self-development, spiritual self-development. You know, I got there sooner than BoJack. In other words,
Yeah,
I got there in my
too.
early 40s rather than my early 50s, and
Yeah.
have I ever burnt my throat from smoking to the point where it's sore for days later? No. You probably just got a sore throat at the same time you smoked a lot. I have gotten sick from like, you know, as I've been a teenager or whatever, I'd smoke a bunch of cigarettes, I'd get sick.
Look at the majesty. Her green eyes would go into whatever the screen was because they're so green.
Well, yeah, I mean, development and maintenance of a healthy and productive mental state is very important. But I think it really, what this show has really brought is coalesce things down into a couple of key questions. The first key question is, you know, what's the point? Which is to say, like, you know, Todd is one kind of understanding of that, a very experiential understanding of what's the point. He doesn't place any meaning on meanings. It's all about what he's doing at the moment and whether it's going to be fun. But he's not exactly a 7. He's not a 7, right? He's probably a 2. So,
I was thinking 9.
well, I mean, again, tri-type wise, he probably has a 2 rather than a 3 or a 4. And he might have a 4, but
Did you see him as a 9? Because like he stayed on the couch for a while.
No, he might very well be a 9, but I'm saying that's not inconsistent with me saying he's a
2. Hell no.
A 2 in terms of 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, I think totally 2.
Right. Well, and Oz Ton went to space is very correct. I've done more than just that. Oz Ton went to space. I've had plenty of all kinds of drugs my whole life. The thing is, it is absolutely a matter of genetics. My body, I've got big lungs and etc. J.W. Zacher, I don't think he is. I'm pretty confident that BoJack's actually an INFJ. I can understand why somebody might think that, but he's just not that ideationally active. He's too smooth while loaded to be an ENTP. He's not TI enough. He's always FE. If you pay attention to like the episode, for example, Stupid Piece of Shit, where you get to see inside of his thinking process. It's self-condemnation for how he treats others is his primary concern all the time, and it's like that's something that, you know, it's like I had the self-condemnation, but it wasn't because of how I treated others exactly. It was because something else, like mostly FE things, like how I was bad at FE and shit. Why NI Dom, why NHA? Well, the thing is, he's okay. So he spends, if you just think about sort of the facts of his narrative, he spends a long time moving remarkably smoothly through the world, even though he's drunk and all these pills and stuff. His default is to be basically FE pleasant. He's very hyper FE aware, but he's also FI, like in the sense that you know that he's drinking and doing drugs and stuff to suppress pain. Yeah, yet he says in the meeting, why does there have to be a reason like that? There's some sort of pain behind it. I drink and get drunk because that's, you know, what I do is what I've always done. That's a very ENTP answer, but for him it's a lie. For me, that's not a lie. For me, that's the truth. He's hiding the fact that he's dealing with his pain.
Yes. Okay, so a good example too is also the funeral scene. He's a 7 in that way. Like, he's talking about his mom, right? But he's mostly talking about himself. I mean, and like his experiences that he had with his mom and that. And he doesn't have much to give to them except the shitty parts to it and the little like nuggets of good stuff, but he mostly makes it about himself. I'm sorry, but if I was in BoJack Horseman's shoes and I, was asked to do a eulogy on someone like his mother, it would probably, and it was like drunk too. I don't drink now. I would probably be the same way, like totally like self-indulgent.
One more good call on Jim. Jim from The Office is an example of a super softy ENTP, but I agree with Octavia. I think of myself as a softy. A lot of people don't think of me as a softy because I can also be a meanie. The thing is, like, I got my chops busted by Delilah this morning because she made some wrong COVID arguments and pissed me off. Like, well, maybe we should. It's just like, and she got upset. She's like, Eric, Dad. She didn't call me Eric, but
what'd she say?
You need to calm down and not get so upset about these sort of things and not be so mean. And I'm just like, oh,
Ooh.
Ouch. Moments of softness tend to sneak up on people with an inactive FI. I mean, I think, I do think that whether or not you're a big softie depends on your perspective on the person. So it's like, I'm a big softie when people are vulnerable with me. If people are not vulnerable with me,
but you are us if you are.
Then I tend to not be very much of a softie. In other words, because my FI is not active, somebody needs to show me their feelings are hurt before I'm going to even consider that, really. I mean, I do consider it some. Obviously, I'm not completely callous and negligent and that sort of stuff, but
not at all. No way.
But it is the case that there are times when I can just go with my sort of reactivity about it, because I get mad about certain things. I especially get mad when Delilah's making such a TE argument there when she's saying, look, it's asking so little people to wear masks, and so you really should wear them, and blah, 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 blah. Because just imagine, she's saying, well, just imagine I were to get sick and they would play back the moment when I got sick and I would, die, and it's because somebody wasn't wearing a mask and they were just, I'm like, well, it wouldn't change my position on the matter at all. That's for sure. It's like, I mean, just it's lightning detector logic where it's like the story of the girl who was playing softball and got struck by lightning in a park in a cloudless sky in Florida, a freak lightning strike, and her mom goes and advocates for public policy that there needs to be lightning detectors in all the parks. Living involves some risk. We don't justify things that way. We allow people to have their autonomy. That which is not forbidden is permitted. Your feelings get hurt all the time. Oh, well, just push them aside and get back to work. I'm sorry to hear your feelings get hurt all the time. Who hurts your feelings?
That.
Or what hurts your feelings? Confirmation bias?
Colby McGrath.
I mean, the thing is, the one thing I would say about confirmation bias is the best way to attack confirmation bias is to consistently, for years and years, every time you make an argument of some sort, to then have to go find the counter argument to it, the best counter argument to it. So as a debate coach, my kids have their debate case, but I have to anticipate what all the best answers to all of our arguments are, so that my kid can also have the answer to the best answer to our argument. And if it goes one further than that, then it's probably going to be a wash in the round, just because of the dynamics of the time, right? And the number of speeches and stuff. But the thing is, that prevents you from having confirmation bias when you do that. Yeah, it debates chess, but it's chess in which the what each piece does on the chessboard is determined by a separate chessboard that argues that. No. Queens on this chessboard don't get to go horizontal. They only get to go this way or diagonal. That there's a chessboard that basically is the ground arguments that defines the ground under which everything else impacts. So if it frames like justice, upholding justice is the most important impact in the round. If that argument gets won, and you've shown that this argument here is unjust, therefore we can't do it, then that should be the round determining factor. So it's a combination of chess plus NI plus TI plus NE. I don't know. It's a weird game. It's the most interesting game I think that human beings play, because it's the only one where the only real limits and how, and it's like it's the ultimate free range ideation machine. EXXJs are good at REXXJs good at recognizing confirmation bias because of the fourth and fifth functions being contrary and being F versus TI. No, ES are terrible at recognizing confirmation bias, as because they are NI polar and FI fourth. Now, my dad's not super likely to be highly influenced by his own FI, in the sense that he's not convinced by FI style arguments necessarily, but he's not particularly good at seeing confirmation bias because he doesn't see truths in general as being very universal. So it's like, well, what other kind of thinking is there besides confirmation bias? It's kind of like that,
That's a very good, interpretation of TE.
TESI.
SI, yes. TESI. That is. Guess what I want to do?
What?
Give you a kiss on the cheek.
I love you, Rachel.
I love you, Eric.
Right. Weak F5 people often don't realize how much they care about something until they've lost it.
Oh God, that statement kills y'all.
I got your reference, Lawnmower. I hadn't gotten to it yet. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, that
I'm working
hurts.
on a book. Hopefully having the hotel to myself and my family will give me space and time to write. Yeah, all work and no play makes Lawnmower yada yada.
Can I talk about a funeral that was totally FI tough for me, especially as a 7? Oh fuck, my grandma Lapalosa's one. First of all, they did her makeup so terribly. She didn't look like herself at all. I was like, what? And then I also felt this ultra gloom amongst everyone, and I was just like, no, things can't be I was just ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, I was the one who was hosting this funeral, and it was ridiculous. It was totally completely ridiculous. And something made me think about, oh yeah, my FI, I wasn't taking care of my own FI, although there's a line in an LCD Sound System song called Someone Great, and it basically says nothing can you prepare you for it, because it's true. It doesn't really matter how or when or whatever. It's still
Well, regarding FI, I think that in the 7th slot, when I do experience FI, I'm more likely to experience it in terms of what I want and whether or not something else is getting in the way of that. Then I'm likely to experience it in terms of putting myself in other people's shoes. Now, the thing is, in its more meaningful sense, and it's more nuanced sense, and it's better incarnations, it involves a lot more of the latter. And you might say, well, isn't that the same thing as FE? It's not the same thing as FE. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes means saying, I'm not going to say that because that person's feelings might be hurt by me saying that. FE is much more attentive to, if I say that, that's going to be perceived as hurtful.
Yeah.
Or be hurtful, which is different than I can feel like, oh, if I say that, how would I feel if somebody said that to me, is an FI question.
Yeah.
And how will they feel if I say this to them is more of an FE question. So it's like FE does consider how they feel, but from a different frame of reference. It's like, well, I didn't want to say that because I thought, how would I feel if somebody said that to me? Some people have said that to me in the past, and it's always been an eye-opener for me. Oh, right. How would I feel if they did that to me? I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as a consequence, I've tended to excise from all my behavior those things that violate the golden rule. The golden rule is rather easy to follow and still be an asshole, right?
FI comes up with a golden rule.
No, I disagree. I think it's backwards. I think that's backwards, Sean. I think you're showing some function bias here.
Yeah, because
the reality is FI has the platinum rule. It says, let me figure out how they want to be treated. FE is the golden rule that says, if it validates, like, well, I'd be okay if you did this to me, then it's fine. That's the ENTP thing, right? I am fine with you critiquing my shit harshly. I have to deal with it constantly, of course, because I'm a YouTuber, right? So I've got to be fine with it. So why should I care about being a bull in a china shop and crushing all of your feelings? I mean, after all, I'm fine if you do it to me. That's the sort of dickish realization of FE without FI, right? I know when I'm going to look bad, when I don't want to look hurtful. That's for sure. That never plays well. And then I know also in the past that there's this weird, awful, stingy feeling called guilt that one has when one has been hurt somebody.
Steamy? Yeah.
No, not steamy. Stingy.
Oh, stingy.
Stingy feeling called guilt. So
guilt sucks.
I know there's that, but but the thing is,
there's no guilt.
From an ENTP's perspective, it's like my first consideration is I don't want to be not liked. So being mean to somebody tends to make them not like you, right? That's FE without FI. The thing is, with FI in the mix, which is every place but third, then you've got a combination of those two factors. Like you have some of the platinum rule in place, and you have some of the golden rule in place. Go ahead.
I told you my grandma posted would have been 100 this year. Like, it's crazy. But, like, I don't know what it was. You tell me. I hope you can tell me. I know you can tell me. But it was like, at first I was pissed because I remember being on the phone, like, with my dad. And, like he didn't say anything and I already knew, and then like he told me like, Grandma Aplosa passed away, she had pneumonia. I was like just like streaming down my face, like crying, just the whole day to like just cry. But like at first I was like pissed because I was like, she had pneumonia and like you guys didn't tell me. Like I fucking hate that bullshit. But then, like, I got over it. It segued into, like, crying. So what was the first reaction? TI? Like, not being fair? Like...
I'm thinking about it. Give me a second.
Sorry.
No, you're right to doubt. You're right to wonder if I'm paying attention, because plenty of times I am getting distracted by the chat. But in this instance, I'm actually thinking about it. So it's like it's FI in some sense in both instances, right? Mm-hmm. But the first FI response is, well, I think it's the idea that you should be kept from knowledge, which is your dominant function, from knowing what's particularly true that's relevant for you to know what's universally true. So you need a particular in that instance to know what to know about a person and your relationship with them in the future and stuff like that, right? It's like, okay, in order to have the proper NI conclusions about, or the proper NI insight on things, I'm going to have, I can't be given false particulars, right? I can't be operating on false premises if I'm going to be drawing the correct conclusions. So I think it's basically an FI response initially to somebody denying you knowledge. It's like denying me the ability to express myself. It's inherently offensive and wrong to me, you know?
Oh, I can feel it in my eyes, how much, like, how sad. Oh, I have rare days like that. That was so terrible. I mean, and it was really hard for me to, like, you know what? I didn't even feel pissed at my dad at the time. That's why, like, FI can creep up on me, maybe INFJs, because, like, I didn't realize, like, just like this, it was just a swirl, but really, like nothing really hits me that hard. It's gotta be like, if you like only something with us really. Like,
look, listen to her.
Sorry,
okay,
I'm so sorry.
No. This is actually. I'm glad that you're utterly failing at the moment because it's demonstrative of something important. FI is, if nothing else, what Colby says. It is inefficient. FI has got to be the most time intensive of all the cognitive functions, at least from my perspective with FI polar and seeing it with Rachel as well. So one of the things about FI is if I have my feelings hurt, I tend to fall silent and I'm processing my feelings at that point. And of course, when I'm in FI in that regard, or in any regard really, my FE is basically shut off. So if I'm watching something, I'm sort of aware of how I appear to others. Like I know that Rachel is probably noting some occasions my FE display, and sometimes I'll look at her and see how she's reacting to something too. Although not very much. But the thing is, I basically have to turn off FE in order to be experiencing the FI. Or in other words, my FE is so locked on to the characters in the show that I'm experiencing life through them in some regard. But it's also true for when my feelings are hurt. If my feelings are hurt, I'm no longer able to manage other people's perceptions, which means like I rarely fall silent. When I do fall silent for a long period of time, even people with limited FE are going to go, is something wrong? Because I normally talk, I'm not necessarily always talkative, but it's easy to check if if you prompt me with a couple of things, it's easy to see if I'm responsive or not and why I'm not if I'm not. Sometimes it's because I'm in the middle of thinking about something that's not related to whatever my feelings. Other times, though, it's because I'm trying to process feelings. When I'm trying to process my feelings, I do what Rachel just did, which is I try to start explaining it, and I find there's no explaining anything. It just befuddles and confuses me.
Yeah. It leaves a mark, though, I will say that. In good ways, too, like my FI, like when I got off the plane with my cardigan and we get into your car and it's like the Miley song came on and like it was just like that's like FI to me, like joy. That left a mark.
FI screws up timing, NI. That's true. It can. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily. I think that's probably from the perspective of an INTP. I think probably ISFP has figured out somehow how to incorporate a fair amount of timing into their life despite the FI. So there's probably a modality of a being in which they do fit together. Like, you know, when you like somebody enough to kiss them, for example, is not a difficult question for an ISFP to answer, but it's an incredibly difficult question for an INTP to answer. As an FI Dom, I find analyzing and explaining my own behaviors and feelings very productive and fulfilling. Right. I just find it shuts my ability to speak down, basically, as it did with Rachel there. It's like when people ask me function questions about FI, I have difficulty talking about the function. Although I was mentioning to Rachel the other day that a good question, I think, for FI that I want to use again, that I used a while ago, is this question about the observatory. So one time I asked this question when typing somebody, and we'll see how people respond to it here.
Yeah.
Which is as follows. So it's your birthday. You tell your mom, your dad, and your group of friends separately, each, that you want to go to the observatory and look through the telescope at the stars. They got a package that you can do to gain access to it, you know, as a regular citizen at the nighttime, and pay to get that done, right? So she's told them all this, and she's hoping that she gets this for her birthday. Now, on her birthday, this is what happens. Her mom gets her a bunch of different things from the observatory, from the observatory gift shop, that she thinks her daughter might like. And the friends, they take her out to a restaurant called the Observatory. It's near the observatory. That's observatory themed. And the dad takes her to the top of a mountain and has her look through a telescope at stars. And she says, he says, you wanted to look through stars, you wanted to look through a telescope of stars, so here you go. Now, she says to them afterwards, she asks, why didn't you take me to the observatory like I asked each of the people? The mom says, well, your dad told me that he was going to make sure you had a chance to look at stars. And the dad said, well, you just said you wanted to go to the observatory to look at stars, so I just figured, why bother with the observatory? We can look at stars this other way. And the friends say that we didn't take you to the observatory because we just assumed you meant the restaurant, that because it's like, why would someone want to go to actual observatory and look at actual stars? Because, you know, that picture of the stars on the wall of the observatory restaurant, so that's what we thought you were talking about. So that's what her friends say. Now the question is, who is she most mad at? Who is she mad at, if anybody, and why? You know, FI people have a more definitive answer to that than TI people.
I literally have had those situations happen to me. I can't tell you how many times, and I've never blamed anyone.
Octavia Silva said, I would have had the NITE foresight to never end up in this ridiculous predicament. Okay, well, I mean, you didn't in this hypothetical. Okay, Octavia, you thought you had taken care of it. Yeah. You told all three of these parties what you wanted. You made it clear, I want to go to the observatory and look through the telescope at the stars. And they ignored what you said and did this thing that they thought was either equivalent or, you know.
Okay, so like, I'm going full blown here. I, for my 30th birthday, got a surprise party for my 30th.
Go ahead.
I never asked for it.
Ooh, and unasked for surprise parties? Not everybody loves those.
No.
ESFJs. Just note here, ESFJs. Not everybody loves surprise parties.
And well, like it was the one place that I've always wanted to go to, I'm saying it to camera right now, was a planetarium. What did I want to do almost every year for my birthday? Go to the planetarium. What did we do? we went to some place to go eat because someone suggested it or asked me, or it would be nothing that I ever asked for. It was never asked for.
You were never mad at anybody about it?
No, I just accepted it.
Here, type this. When my feelings are hurt, it's usually because of an untruth. My problem is that I have TENI, and it's a lot of jumping into action and then planning. I bet. Well, if you're TENI SE third slot, you get a lot of satisfaction from getting shit actually done, you know? So there's different amount of, like, people, ENTJ is the most externally valid type if you look at it from a physical frame, which is to say they're most likely to do what seems to be the logical purpose of any agent, which is to know how to get what they're trying to get to, and to do the things that need to be done to get there, and for their actions to attain most of the time their goals pretty consistently.
I'd like to do a poll for you. I decided this morning.
Cool.
Look, I actually really appreciated. I got the one thing. I actually did get one thing on my birthday that year, my 30th birthday, and that's my Michael Kors neon blue bag. So I was very happy about that, and a lot of effort was put into the party. Honestly, I was very grateful. I actually kind of ruined the surprise because, well, two things. The person who took me there, like, didn't know directions in New York City, and like took me the opposite direction. Like, I know that the Museum of Natural History, I knew that I was going to the Museum of Natural History for my birthday because, like, I planned it. And, and I didn't plan it, but like, I knew I was going to Natural History for my birthday, but I knew the Museum of Natural History is west, not east. So, like, we're driving. We're going towards, like, the Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Like, I'm like, there's nothing over here. Like, where the fuck are we going? Like, do you know? And in my head, I'm like, do you fucking know where we're going? No, we didn't. And then we're in the museum, and I go to the bathroom. I'm like, hey, I have to go to the bathroom. I'm entering, my cousins are leaving, and I'm like, Leah, Carly, what are you doing here? Like, they're like, oh, they did a really good job, like, hiding it. They were like, oh, we're here with Aunt Jan, they're babysitting us. But still, I was like, that's such a far travel for you, like. So
Xavier, he says, damn what I wouldn't give to just get shit done. Well, Xavier reads, the thing is, I want to spend some time addressing this point, because it's kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about from the takeaway from BoJack Horseman is, it's like, how much energy ought one put into what kind of a thing? It's like, you know, if you were to be asked the question, well, would you rather be unable to not get everything done or unable to get anything done? Well, in other words, you're asking, would you rather be an ENTJ or an INTP? Well, from a from a sort of an external world perspective, if you're just factoring in how shit plays, obviously ENTJ's life plays as a lot more desirable, naturally effective, in general, kind of like the way to be, right? But how how much of my wanting myself, for example, to be more successful, which is a little bit different than wanting to get more stuff done. I get plenty of stuff done. It's a matter of the kind of stuff I get done and whether or not it comprises, sufficiently good work or whatever.
I pulled your cards.
Okay, let me just finish my thoughts on this because
I'm
it's something
sorry.
that I actually wanted to talk about when I started the thing, and I'm glad it got back to the topic on this point. And then leave them out, and I'll look at them in a second. I don't mean to tell you not to do it.
That's all right.
I know he is no longer around to know that I am mad at him. Who's no longer around to know that I am? Oh yeah, I know, Winston's mom. I feel the same way. So it's like, okay, in that show at one point, Diane says to herself, or in reference to herself, stop complaining and work harder. And I'm just like, kick in the gut, kick in the gut. But that's one of the messages she has for herself. She's the character that I can most sort of link to in this show because she's the NTP in the show. She's I, not E, but nevertheless. And she's so textbook INTP with her overthought costume, baby Bjorn Borg. Does any TI operate in a seesaw fashion, i.e. ideational explosion is logically achieved and so on in real time? You don't know exactly where you're going metaphysically till you get there. Well, I mean, you got to factor in the SI component as well. So there's not just new ideation occurring. There's inclusion of what you already have at your disposal. And, so in other words, there's always going to be a newness to how things are expressed, or more or less, not always, but in general. No, thank you. There's always going to be the this reality that persists, which is that the stuff from before is always relevant. So right now I'm trying to answer this question with stuff from before. I'm saying, okay, look, the thing that he's saying here is drawing a partial dichotomy rather than a more complete one, because it's not accounting for the fact that any is linked to SI, which tells us what we already know and what we already have said before, some equivalent to it. So there's the SI in this instance is primarily responsible for this answer in some sense. The TI makes sure the answer is actually responsive to the question asked and reviews what you're saying, gets information again to make sure it is responsive. So I go, okay, you don't know exactly where you're going metaphysically to get there. Well, that's not really true. Like, well, yes, I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I knew the gist of this thing I'm saying right here to you before I began executing it. Yeah. So I had the distillation already, the NI aspects of it, which is to say, I already knew that the issue here was to more correctly understand this thing here. You have to incorporate that you do know where you're going, in the sense that I do know the SI answer to this, which is SI, the NI answer to this, which is SI. In other words, it's both the truth universally and it's my answer because I've given it before.
Okay, can I read your cards? Because
yes,
but you're interpreting them, and
sure.
I'll read it from the book or whatever you want.
No, I'll do it.
Okay, so here they are. The 7 of Swords.
I should have said the thing first. Okay, so Fox going after the chickens.
Yeah.
Huh? I think this is representative of one of my current dichotomies in life, which is whether and in what context I'm the fox and whether and in what context I'm the chickens. So I'm on both sides of this wall, depending on on the circumstances. And this is one of the dichotomies that I straddle as I walk through life. So this is like a existing condition that the rest of these cards may answer. The next one would say, I guess, a condition that I guess is sort of an existing and kind of permanent condition. Next one would be an existing and evolving condition.
You get to choose. We got the Six of Swords here.
Six of Swords, existing and evolving condition. Now these people here, they're skydiving. They're doing like a skydiving group routine.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is saying that an evolving condition is my incorporation of more energies into a unified goal. That this is an area, I guess, where I can grow or something.
Totally.
Do a better job of this. But it also, since I said it was an evolving one, it probably suggests that it's currently something that I'm incorporating on some level into things. And then last
but not least, Six of Discs.
I think this is sort of like what it'll ultimately come down to, which is, attending to other people instead of just being so Eric focused or something. I think ultimately, it's an easier path to success by directing one's robust analysis capacities at other people and other things that are popular.
Yeah.
Hi, Trenton.
What up, Trenton? And I wanted to say thank you, Winston's mom. I appreciate the compliment.
Trenton's significant from way back. Why is it,
really?
Yeah. Why is it so important to have credentials to the world as a whole? It's only important to half the world because, there are two kinds of types. There are those who are TI, which is to say they think they're going to at least be on some level that the TI status is something that's parsable, that you can know whether it's communicatively correct or not, which is to say more legitimate. Have a nice night, Trenton.
Want to hear a TE thing that happened to me with cheese? I got the directions from Eric how to close the cheese, but I didn't fully understand. And the cheese ended up getting kind of like messed up because of the way that I closed it, and I ruined the cheese. I felt so bad.
You didn't ruin the whole cheese.
I didn't?
No.
It's still salvageable?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
It's just,
oh my gosh. I know the hard part.
Yeah, it's just the very end of it. Regardless.
But still, I didn't comprehend the whole thing.
Yeah, dopamine management is a significant factor in lots of different stuff in terms of how certain types deal with shit. But Colby Magara, that's so not true. That's so silly. That's so SI polar of you. Colby's just being SI polar all over. He's not understanding that particular individual experiences are actually, determinant for lots of people on certain things.
So, can I talk about Whisper of the Heart? It's really gaff. Like, I wouldn't say that, but it's like my new favorite, cartoon movie love story. It's so cute because I really think that the little girl is an INFJ7. Like, some of the things that she says, I'm like, oh my god, I've said that before. It makes me really happy. And so I like thinking about how I'm not sure if the dude in the love stories in ENTP. I think he is.
Okay, so Colby McGarr says, I don't understand what you mean by that. You don't understand what I mean when you say, it's in your mind to make the rules. Yeah, that's a TE mindset. It's saying, look, if you know what you want, then you have your clear goal. That's FI. That's the hard part. Once you've got a clear goal, then you just establish what that goal is. Write down some benchmarks, maybe know what the order of operations is, figure out the best course, and you just solve that problem. You just follow through and you do it. That's the satisfaction. You get it done and you feel like, yeah, I got it done.
Trust me, it's not, obviously.
Colby, that description I just did is a description of an ENTJ describing themselves and thinking they're describing reality.
Clink.
Multi-substance cheers. Intersubstance cheers. Of course, there's no substance in this, really. This is non-alcoholic beer. But it does make me want to get a non-alcoholic beer as well. I think I might go.
That's why I offered. I was
I still have some Coke left. I don't like to leave my drinks unfinished.
I'm the same way. I am the same way. It's totally fine. I have to say, 100% ENTP, INFJ is a very healthy relationship.
Extremely healthy.
Yes.
I mean, this one is.
This one is.
It's not necessarily. Because the thing is, we can think of Richello and
oh yeah,
and
Isaiah Rude.
And the thing is, Richello is more BoJacky, right?
Yeah.
Than you would ever possibly be.
Hell no.
It really shows that people get framed somewhat by whether or not they get enough love when they're kids. If you get enough love, even if some other aspects are kind of fucked up. If you get enough authentic love, and Rachel definitely got that from her dad, nothing else,
No, yeah, I got it from my grandma La Pelosa too. That's why the hit was so hard, man. Like, I was pissed. I was pissed at my dad for not telling me that she had pneumonia, and I could have been home. That's what I kept on saying to myself. I was like, I could have been home. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You're not telling me that my grandma, who I love with all my heart, is in the hospital with a pneumonia. That's a much nicer way of telling me than just over the phone being like, hey, she's dead and it was pneumonia.
Well, see, Colby, here's the thing about this, that to make it a little bit more exemplified. So it is true that define a goal, create a plan, execute, reap the rewards is an effective way to go about being effective. Okay. Here's the problem. So I'm an NE-DOM, which means especially as an ENTP, given that I counter value TE, 6 slot, it means that essentially the way I would like to be is one in which I put a lot of action and get a lot of feedback in real time, hopefully positive feedback. In other words, I'd like to constantly be performing in a way that allows me to get immediate, responsive, interactive FE response. Okay. So what that seems natural to you, what seems natural to me is to live stream, to talk about a succession of different ideas that people put up in front of me, never really thoroughly discussing anything. And to engage with people in a way that makes them ultimately think well of me, hopefully. He seems like a smart guy. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. He seems like he's right. And also, he seems like he's nice. He seems like he's kind and so forth. And I like him. That's what my equivalent thing is. Now, yours obviously sounds way better, right? It's a way more logical way to go about life if you see life as fundamentally getting what you want. But if you don't see life as fundamentally about getting what you want, whether you act as, it's interesting. Colby has this frame of reference that's perfect for getting what you want, but he never really actually gets to enjoy what he wants at any point, right? So he's always getting something else that he wants. He's never enjoying what he's gotten. So it's the cruel irony of it's the cruel irony of things. Well, yes, wanting to be liked by others is an interested calculus. Definitionally, every human being, every agent is an interested being. That is to say, they have interests. The question is not whether people have interests, it's whether they use those interests, on which level they use those interests. So what you're saying is, even for FE, there's a frame of FI through which FE can be framed. You're right. That's true. That's true. But we can frame everything through the interested calculus, because to say that you are an agent is to say that you move towards the prime directive, which is in and of itself an interest. And the prime directive is the closing of the gap between the map and the territory. So, I mean, Clayton says getting what you want may be validation, though. Well, look, I'm at a point in my life when I'm ready to try to at least consciously decide and attempt to follow through on the idea of being more TE. But if I had done that today, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be making videos for upload rather than live streaming. I prefer live streaming. I would like to believe that there's some means by which one can attain equivalent level of success just by live streaming is by uploading. But the fact is, I am a lot more successful uploading videos than I am live streaming. A quick question I've been thinking about for a while is the reason someone might find it difficult to type themselves because they lack SI, like an internal patterning system of organizing behaviors. No, it would be because they lack NI in part. It would be one reason, or they countervalue it. So it's like, or they have FI too high up. So the type that's least likely to get their own type right and stick with it is probably ESFP. They don't want to be an ESFP because they don't like the type descriptions of ESFP. They're TI polar, so they can't understand it except through type descriptions, really. They don't have their own understanding of it. They can only understand it through the countervalued FE. They don't like to have to be FE, but so they're the types who are most likely to mistype themselves, probably.
I think it's I mistyped myself for a while. Okay, but
look, here's the thing. I'm saying mistype yourself after you've been exposed to a proper understanding of it, because the fact is, there are other people out in the world who talk about cognitive functions the way I talked about cognitive functions. Probably most of those people who talk about it like I do are people who interacted with me and learned it through talking with famous people, which does not mean that everything that you hear here is my creation, right? It's what I'm saying is that here's where the actual intellectual work is being done. It's mostly being done by me, but it's being done through a lot of this kind of interaction. Is to say, I take ideas from everybody who has good ideas when I can, and the reason it comes together the way it does is because it's subjected to the proper kind of TI of fully realized TI scrutiny. Yeah. It's got to be philosophically fully realized. Which is to say, you got to understand that the problem with socionics, for example, is it doesn't have the frames of reference set up first ahead of time the way that this does, which is to say, it doesn't talk about fields and it doesn't talk. It needs to talk about things like. Okay, here's a perfect example. Socionics talks about plus and minus, okay? Plus and minus. So it says, well, there's positive TI and negative TI or something like that. Well, that's just not the case. It's what really accounts for that stuff. Well, whether or not I use, first of all, whether or not I'm affirming or negating or having a positive or negative experience doesn't really link to a cognitive function directly at all. So whether or not I'm affirming or negating with my TI really depends on the context, and I certainly can do both. Now, you might say that there's an equivalent to all functions because there appears to be an equivalent to FI as well. The equivalent to FI is that while TI can affirm or negate, FI can know what you want, or it can put yourself in somebody else's shoes and sort of know about wanting in general and valuing in general.
Who is saying that is us?
It's a nice picture.
Isn't it?
So
It's my new favorite movie. And which is great because it has a happy ending. It's nice to have a new movie.
I'm glad.
It's favorite.
I want to. Yeah, mistyping stems for 3 problems. Well, Octavia Silva, I like where you're going here. Lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of self, or wanting to be something you're not. I think that mistyping depends. I from a sort of structural perspective, I'd say it's inadequate kinds of questions. Like, in other words, either not asking enough different kinds of questions about the same thing. So if I want to establish TI, I could do it with skills, but I really need to check the values as well and sort of check the self-reporting and, get reasons behind self-reporting and such. So then the other thing is the other problem with mistyping people is, they're the fact that if people are typing themselves, they're going to be wrong for those 3 reasons. If they're typing themselves, mistyping occurs for lack of knowledge, lack of understanding of self, or wanting to be something you're not, which is to say FI over TI at the expense of NI. But another reason why people would mistype somebody is, so it might be not enough range of questions or something, but it might also be just too much of a gap between affect and non-affect. It's like if somebody's really putting a lot of affect out there and doing it successfully, then it's easy enough to potentially mistake that affect for a type. Like ISFJs will be mistyped as ESFJs at first as they got their FE tool in gear. Interestingly, ENFJs can potentially, briefly anyway, or for a stretch of time, be mistyped as INFJs because they got their NI tool in the mix. And INFJs can be mistyped as ENFJs because they've got their FE tool in the mix. So it can be just a matter of not spending enough time with them. It eventually became very clear to me that Rachel was an INFJ, and at first I thought she was an ENFJ, but there were just too many things that screamed INFJ. But depending on when you encounter her here in live streams and stuff, depending on how extroverted she's feeling, I'm kind of with you on. I have barely seen anything by him, and I don't like him. He doesn't seem. He seems unfunny to me.
Who?
Trevor Noah. I don't know hardly anything about him, but I don't like him.
He's very like, I'm from South Africa, so I know everything, but he's not funny.
I think they probably hired him for the wrong reasons. They probably hired him for political reasons.
Yeah, I think so too.
INFJs need to have secrets. ENFJs don't. It's interesting. Rachel's, I think, been compelled by life to forsake a lot of secrets. She doesn't really have a lot of secrets. She's pretty open about things.
Yeah, because I learned by observation that secrets are no fun. Secret hurt someone. So I don't know. I really don't like to apologize for who I am. And it's something that like I did when I was a kid. So I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So the other perspective, just for everybody's reference, is secret. I've got a secret. I am the modern man. Secret. I've got a secret with parts made in Japan. Secret. I've got a secret.
So good.
I'm Kilroy.
Kilroy. That was a huge thing for me that I can't relate to INFJ's need for secrecy and all the ENFJ INF videos on YouTube. Honestly, okay, like,
I mean, you should relate quite a bit. All the external parts of INFJ and ENFJ are going to validate with each other, just like INTP and ENTP's external parts validate with each other. But
it could be like, okay, so like, do you look at Frank James's stuff at all? Like other INFJs on YouTube are telling INFJs that they have this private side they can't share. I'm not who's saying that.
I don't know, other INFJs.
I mean, like, I don't.
The thing is, INFJs probably wouldn't make public that explicitly that private side. Yeah. I think it's true in general that INFJs are running a lot of the time in the private space in their head, which is to say, NI is a knowing function, it's a receive function. So they're spending their time privately, sort of, the locus of the self is in this private space of receiving knowledge about things. But that doesn't mean that they actually are secretive. It just means they're introverts. They're not extroverts.
Also, I can understand why he would be annoying to you in that way. Also, like, seem inauthentic. He's like working on his own as an INFJ.
Who seems inauthentic? Who says who seems inauthentic?
Like he keeps the secret side. Well, like, because I think okay, like when he answers questions, I think he does. Like,
I think that's more true of other INFJs than you, Rachel.
Well, because I'm a 7.
You're a 7, and for other particular reasons. The thing
he's a 4 too. He's like very like.
I also think that health and transparency go together quite a bit. So,
I also don't drink.
Okay, let me finish this stuff. Health and transparency go together a lot.
Oh yeah.
So Rachel is more transparent because, in part, life has forced her to be more transparent, and additionally, because she's pretty actively moral. She's a good person. And the secrecy to me in general links to secrecy about yourself anyway tends to link towards unsavoriness and bad behavior.
Yeah.
So I think part of the reason why Rachel is more transparent than other INFJs is because she's less shady than other INFJs. Does Rachel's FE give you some kind of benchmark to try and better your own FE and vice versa? Do you ever fake FI around her, or can she let your guard down? Or can't? No, I don't fake FI, or all my FI is fake, one of the two. And if it's all fake, then it doesn't matter because I don't willfully fake anything. I give I guess, mostly FE responses. So if Rachel says, like, you're the best, Eric, or I love you, Eric, I'm going to respond by reciprocating, I love you too. You're also the best, or something like that.
Yeah, thank you. You say thank you, darling.
Or I'll say thank you, or something like that. Or sometimes I'll initiate those kind of statements. And we've engaged in lots of positive statements back and forth to each other for basically the whole duration of our relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's a habit. FI statements. So, look, here's the thing about FI statements, quote unquote. If there are occasions when I'm making my statements, and they're motivated by FI, but they're unlikely to be the kind of things I'm going to be saying around here. Like, I remember one time. This is a long time ago. It's funny I reached back this far to think of an example of a time when I was motivated by my FI to be wrong. I had my feelings hurt about being included in a project that I wanted to be included in, and they didn't think it was a good idea aesthetically. Corey didn't, and that hurt my feelings and allowed me to make some wrong arguments about, what Corey should prioritize here, basically being my feelings over what he was working on. And, I was wrong about that. And I let my FI drive my reasoning. I don't generally think, that I persist in wrong reasoning because of what I want for very long nowadays. Very little amount of time, usually. So, Sean O'Neill, that's because that's a TE frame or a low FE frame, maybe, from Diamond, that
What time is it?
8:32. You getting ready for bed or what?
I mean, I'm probably gonna take it later than now.
Right.
I was thinking like 9:30. I was gonna take my medicine. So.
Yeah. Do you value being a good person, or are you a good person because it's the best thing to be? Mm-hmm. Well, see, this is the thing. I find not being a good person painful. And sometimes I find being a good person rewarding. And when I don't find it rewarding, I find it not painful. Not nearly as painful as being a bad person. So it's kind of an SI frame of reference, which is I've learned my lesson in the past that not being a good person, willfully, knowingly sinning, causes me to suffer. It doesn't work. It's like it's as a bad cost benefit exchange.
I had to learn that too. No, I didn't know. I had no clue.
And it's like the thing is, what I think part of the way I learned it is that lies catch up with you. That's sort of like the starting point. The starting point.
Yeah.
Is that the starting point of all evil is dishonesty, whether it's dishonest to yourself or dishonest to other people. It's a failure to trust in the goodness and correctness of the universe. People make you feel as much as you allow them to. Well, there's sort of that. That's sort of true to the extent that you can get away from people. That's sort of true, but you can't always get away from people. And to the extent that you can't always choose your company, they have access to both your metaphysical side as well as the physical. So it's true that in theory you can shut off your listening and caring but in practice it's very difficult without actually going like this.
There's some
Nah,
people,
nah, 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 nah,
yeah,
nah, nah.
there's some people who totally like ignore that, like completely. They don't give a shit. I don't mean to frame it so harshly, but it's just the truth.
Oh, it's okay, Zandy. I know you guys sometimes talk to each other, but really deep down, you're talking to me.
Oh yeah.
One thing I liked about that show is it said that when people become famous, they stop maturing, basically. So however mature they are, it's as mature as they're going to be once they get famous. But I still am hoping at some point to get famous. And the nice thing is, if and when I do, then I'm already about as mature as I'm gonna get. So
it totally makes sense why people who have celebrities who have children have an inflated ego, because they're already under that spectrum. It depends on how they're raised. Of course, I'm not going to say everyone is ridiculous, but I can understand the privileges of having a privileged family because your parents are actors. Having a name.
The thing is, it definitely impacts people's ontologies as to their particulars. So whether or not you grew up in a circumstance that required you to scramble around and get a lot of shit done or not is going to have something to do with how comfortable you are scrambling around and getting shit done now. But the other thing that has something to do with that is what you consider, the default reflexive way to be.
I just want to throw it on the table. I think that's why people are obsessed with, or some people I should say, are so obsessed with the Olsen twins, because they grew up in that world at such a young age. I'm not even gonna lie, I went through a phase of being obsessed because I was obsessed with their fashion. It's bizarre. Yeah.
There's a lot of SI associations and stuff to watch when they're kids. That's the other thing that's part of what you take away from BoJack Horseman is that people link back to their pasts and in varying degrees. So, sometimes BoJack's subjected to people who can't get past him from this one role in horsing around in some parts of the show, right? Other parts of the show he's dealing with young people who have no idea who he is or have heard of anything, and are just oh wait, are you that old man who was in the Miata? Like that kind of a thing or whatever. And then it's revelatory of the way that people deal with media differently to some extent. Is there a healthy attachment to the past? Sure. If you want to call it that. Not all using of the past is attachment to it. Having as an easily accessible resource the particular links to experiences that you had. For example, I was saying before that because I remember in the past that being a bad person produces bad outcomes, including, I guess, feeling bad, but it just doesn't, it never pays off. So that's an SI frame of reference because I'm using the past to justify that why I'm going to behave like Mia in the future. And you can see that somebody like the guy who's the tool store owner, right? He's got in that circumstance an unhealthy relationship with the past. He owns a successful tool store just outside of Milwaukee, and he gets sort of swept up into trying to get into Hollywood again with a new show with BoJack because he's he can't quite get over what he used to be, and how now he's not as even though he's very successful by anybody else's standards, right? That would be an unhealthy attachment to the past. Additionally, because the NI fact is, while he had been fine enough in his role and successful enough in his role as a kid actor on that show, he wasn't, he wasn't made to be in Hollywood. He wasn't a Hollywood type. He wasn't a particularly good actor. He wasn't very handsome or whatever, or particularly creative. He just sort of lucked into the role, So his wanting to go back and sort of re-inhabit that space is, I would say, an unhealthy attachment to the past. Like, I'm done with being a debate coach, more or less. Like, I am still a debate coach, but I'm probably not. If it ends up this way, then it would have gone against plan, so to speak, for me to end up with another big squad at this point, taking people to tournaments and doing all the big coaching jobs and stuff like that. I'm not going to have that kind of significant position in the debate coaching community in the way that I used to ever. It used to be the case that I had such a position and was quite successful and quite a bigwig, and won a lot. Do I miss that importance? No, I don't. I never really got off on the importance. It's not the kind of FE I get off on, I think. It's comes with being a 4. I mean, I may be FE third, FI polar, but I'm also a 4, type 4. So Colby and Megara, you mentioned politics earlier. That was the thing that I wanted to get back to. You said, should you dip your foot into politics? See, this is the thing. I already know for certain that I would like to make a serious run for the presidency. It is difficult for me to take the little actions that I need to consistently across time that will make that happen. And it's difficult for me to run and think of a campaign. What are you looking for? The weed? No. This isn't. That's not it. This is it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, what I really need to do is coordinate with an ENTJ about that. I need to figure out how to put together a campaign. I need a campaign manager. For me, you're talking to me, Colby? I'm not looking for anything to be bankrolled even. I need to find the right person to help me have a plan and follow through on it, who's like a campaign manager type. Yeah. Obviously, it's going to take money to do as well, but that's actually not my primary need. I don't trust myself to spend any money, because I don't know. I don't feel like I know what my plan is clearly enough. You know what I'm saying? It's complicated. It's such a complicated question. NI is a challenge. So, well, I have a platform if you want to read it, but I have a number of political videos as well. Basically, here's my position on politics and status quo. That we are generally talking about things wrong and engaging in things on too divisive a level. So, like, you take an issue like global warming. There's a need from some of the people that there be an acknowledgement that the fundamental positions that they were holding and that were being resisted for a while are in fact true. At the same time, there's a presumption of solvency that ought not be driving policy here, which is to say, it's presumed that by some sort of carbon taxes or limiting carbon emissions that we're going to meaningfully address the problem, to solve it, or at least make it better enough to justify the costs. And if we're going to justify the limit on production based on the notion that it's going to improve the problem, then it really needs to actually improve the problem. If in fact that cutting back on production in the West, for example, is just a gap that becomes filled by increased production from more polluting countries such as China, India, or Brazil, the BRIC pack, then obviously there's no point in implementing those kind of policy. My position is this: we don't even know for sure what the curve is on carbon. We do know this, that both Earth's hottest periods in its history and its coldest periods in history were both caused by too much carbon in the atmosphere, right? So there's plenty of examples where a bunch of volcanoes go off or an asteroid hits the Earth and supposedly it's surrounded by soot and stuff and other carbon particulates, and it blocks out the sun's vision, later it cools down the Earth, and we have an ice age. So we don't know what the mathematics curve is on carbon plus versus heating. It's not a straight line, as we're presuming it is with making our policy. So the point is this: regarding public policy of climate change, we ought to commit to a public policy that says we're going to adapt and address after, not mitigate in advance. So if there's too much poop and pee because people go to the bathroom all the time, we don't try to solve that problem by getting people to poop and pee less. We should get it solved by dealing with the poop and pee better. And that we should take the same approach towards global warming. On a matter like, drug legalization. Well, my position is the way the federal government is supposed to be in a relationship with the states means that that's a state's matter, and that the federal government ought not be involved in the matter of drug enforcement at all. As president, I don't need to concern myself what the ideal policy is on drugs, because I have to acknowledge that that falls under the 10th Amendment's purview of states' rights. So as a consequence, my point is that my approach is one where I tend to avoid or try to avoid divisive solutions to things, win-lose, zero-sum things. While acknowledging that some things are going to have to be zero-sum, I want to at least argumentationally have everything well defended. So at least that the reasons and the justifications for things are public and consistent. People can feel as though their concerns are genuinely being addressed one way or the other. I have a number of positions on, I mean, I can tell you my position on any particular issue you want if it's the sort of thing that has a specific position on it. But my policy regarding foreign relations is we should not be killing people overseas in this sort of extra legal non-war thing that justifies drone strikes, and we should get rid of those. Business would fight hard against me? I'm very pro-business. Well, why would you say that? I mean, the thing is, you're presuming that the federal government needs to be involved with the enforcement of illegal drugs. So that's what I'm specifically talking about. I'm not saying we need to get rid of the FDA, because here's the thing. Getting rid of the DEA as a federal crimes enforcement thing can be gotten to with a number of different arguments. Okay, and this is something that can be dealt with even through the courts. I don't even have to make legislation. Okay, I'm talking about changing the way that we interpret the things by case law a lot of times, using the Attorney General's office and being smart about it. Circumventing legislation where possible because existing case law is fundamentally wrong in its judgments. In other words, where it loses demonstrably the TI arguments. So I can take down the DEA without touching the FDA. No problem, because the arguments don't generalize like that in case law. Then I've done two different things. I made things more in alignment with how they ought to be, and I've the other thing is though, Colin, is nobody would disagree. No business would not oppose me on what I'm saying about climate change. No business would fight me on saying we ought to have fewer carbon caps and carbon taxes and carbon stuff. Emissions controls are great as far as air pollution goes. That's a different matter entirely, right? So carbon dioxide is something different than air pollution. California's had excellent environmental laws that have helped improve the air pollution since I was a kid to now. And I'm not opposed to environmental legislation in general. But what I am opposed to is things that are ill-advised, like things that just don't work well. So no matter like if you're talking about redistributionist stuff, okay, well, let's say you favor a redistributionist agenda. Even if you're going to get your redistribution that you want, we should both be in agreement that means tested in-kind benefits are bad because they don't attain the outcomes that either side wants. If you think redistribution is good, redistribution policies are good, then we need to stop using tax dollars in a roundabout way to redistribute and give cash payments to people and get rid of the unfair, non-generalized kind of redistribution the way it's done now. You know, there needs to be some degree of recognition that when we involve the government, it's not saying we should never involve the government in things. I'm just saying when we do involve the government, there is an immediate cost that falls into place. And there's a cost that hits on multiple levels depending on the kind of government thing we're talking about. Some kinds of government action are much more costly across a lot more vectors than others, and some have more positive impacts across more vectors than others. I like that lawnmower. That's funny. Lawnmower says, look, would you rather be gay for 5 minutes or stupid your whole life? Take the dick and take the money. That's funny.
That is funny. Let's try a lawnmower.
So Colby says, what's my flagship? My flagship is a simple idea that I think is demonstrative of the kind of president I'd like to be. My flagship is I'd like to save the Salton Sea in California. I'd like to make it a federal reclamation project. Now, this shows both my willingness to spend a certain amount of federal dollars and why the kind of program I think ought to be spending money on. So the reason I want to do this is because the Salton Sea will be an astonishingly cheap reclamation project. All that's required is that we build a desalination plant at the Salton Sea and possibly pump some water into it. The problem is in the 40s, it was this amazing destination, which had a certain salinity. It supported sea fish in there, and it was the best ocean fishing in the world, even though it was a freshwater lake in the middle of the desert. The water temperature was so high that the fish just bred and bred and bred. The thing is, it needs to be, it's a lake with no inlet to it. So it was created accidentally when people accidentally rechanneled the Colorado River back in the early 20th century, trying to cut canals into it. It broke through their like canal area and redirected itself and dumped into the desert for like 3 years, creating the Salton Sea. So anyway, this thing, although it's man-made accidentally, it for many decades was an enormously important wetlands area, even though it's like in the middle of the desert, you know. It's a stop for birds. It's a place where it's an economy generator. People go fishing there. It's a place where people can have a good time. And all it needs is a desalination plant. It basically needs what my aquarium has. The reason my aquarium is not like the Salton Sea is because of two things. I've got a filter on there that I change periodically or clean out and put back in. And it's got, I put fresh water in it with no salts in it. So this Salton Sea is subject to runoff from agriculture and stuff. It gets too salty. So anyway, the point is, this is the kind of plan I like as president. It's a very big problem in the sense that it's an environmental disaster. It's a very simple solution and a very cheap solution. And it's a permanent solution or semi-permanent. It's not recurring costs or it's not subject to any kind of mission creep. And it actually creates something that has a meaningful difference in the country. Now, and I choose the fact that I'm doing something both that's environmentally smart and that's spending tax dollars to prove that I am not just I'm not fundamentally a libertarian or something. It's part of my understanding of it. Because if people are going to mistake me as something, they're going to mistake me as a libertarian. Or I don't want to be part of any group. I don't want to fit into any box except genuine solution man and consensus and builder and discourse improver. You know, that's what I'd like to be driving my my presidency. We can avoid the divisive things. We can improve how we talk and think about politics in general. We can stop attributing bad policies to bad people, which is the number one mistake we do, right? Because here's the thing. Jody thinks policy A is a good idea. Judy thinks policy B is a good idea. And Jody thinks either Judy or Jody must be right. Eric notes they're all thinking incorrectly about things, probably. So Jody says policy A is a good idea. Turns out she's wrong. It turns out to have bad impacts. Judy says policy B is a good idea. She's wrong as well. It also has bad impacts, which means Jody is wrong as well because she thought one of those two must be right. There's also Jody with an A, and she thinks that therefore the middle ground between plan A and plan B is correct. Well, she's wrong as well. So understanding that is the number one thing about my presidency. Understanding all the different ways you can be wrong to avoid them all is my number one consideration. You can't always avoid them all. Sometimes avoiding some truth is mutually exclusive of embracing some other truths. But I mean, I think it does too, Colby. I really do. And it's just a matter of me figuring out how to get from point A to point Z. Yeah, I've asked before on videos, and I want to do this, upload more of these videos where I articulate specific positions on specific matters and my general approach or whatever, short videos, political in nature, less than 10 minutes, and ask people to write my name in if you aren't in a battleground state. If you think, like, there might be somebody who says, I find both Trump and the idea of voting for a person with dementia equally repulsive, so I'm not going to vote. Because we only really have one choice. I think it's a fair argument about voting this time. There's no reason to vote for president because we were only actually offered one choice, which is Trump, because having dementia would seem to disqualify Biden. I mean, I don't know if it's in the Constitution or anything, but just Eric Strauss, for instance, Mom, not host Eric, yeah. If you write in host Eric, I don't think that's going to work. You have to write in Eric Strauss. Yeah, I should start dressing a little more properly 3-year nomad. And it is true that money's pretty tight right now because, I'm working a lot more than I was in the summer. I still don't have the same amount of debate. Like, there's not, shit's stamped down a bit. In the post-COVID era, things are kind of, man. Oliver notes that Trump might have the early stages of dementia too. That's possible, but Biden is well along the process. He has no business running for dog catcher.
And also, I'm not really happy that I don't even have the option to vote.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have no one to blame but ourselves for that, or me maybe. I guess you can blame me.
You know what? Fuck it though. I probably wouldn't. I'm not voting this year. Fuck that. It's all in my face. It's everywhere. They're pushing it so hard this year. I'm like, why this year? Stupid idiots. It's too late.
How's your period coming along?
I'm sorry.
Is it coming pretty soon?
Yeah, it definitely is coming. Why?
I just
Sorry.
No. I just realized. Oh, you're a little PMSy probably.
It literally is like 5.
I'm a little PMSy too right now. Let's see.
No, I'm not voting this year.
Angantir, I've been fascinated watching INTJs on YouTube. We take so long to say something that very serious and very, very earnest in our presentation rather stuff being formal. That's true. What did Winston's mom make up? Let's see. I don't see what she said that. Oh, Lawnmower said you plan to bring back hangings as president. Oh yeah, I didn't even read that. No, I don't plan to bring back hangings. Um, Trump's drugged out. You think Trump's drugged out? I don't think so. Oh, it's misogynistic of me. Oh, well, I mean, I take stimulants too, or I take Adderall. But the thing is, Colby, that's not correct. Look, Colby, let me tell you something. My outbursts of anger do not correlate at all to being on Adderall or not. They don't at all. There are some times when I don't get enough sleep in a cycle of taking it that not getting enough sleep makes me a little more grumpy. But by and large, my angry outbursts are due to the fact that I've always had angry outbursts. I've always been one who responds at some point with anger to things. Maybe not always, but as I've gotten older, I sort of settled into it. There was a period in my life when I frequently responded with anger, where it was almost like a dominant function, but not dominant function, dominant enneagram thing. Oh, like meth or coke. I think you're underestimating the ability of an ESFP to just be an ESFP. It's like I think Trump is just Trump. He's He's FI as a tool function, which means he knows what he would like to be the case or what he wants to be so. He's FE6. He's constantly trying to control everybody's perceptions of him. And he's forethought NI, so he has no idea whether he's doing a good job of it or not. And he's an SE Dom, so he just follows through on what he said he was going to do as best he could when he became president. And, it's like, body biggity ba. Do we drug test the president? No. Because being on drugs doesn't inherently mean anything. It's like we have people on all kinds of different drugs for different reasons, and we call them medications. And when people do other kind of drugs in other contexts, we call them, abuse. Call that abuse. But those aren't legitimate distinctions. I don't think we should really drug test anybody. I guess maybe like, airplane pilots, surgeons or something, maybe. But I don't even think we should really drug test them. I mean, it's indicative of a world where we try to centralize and standardize and protocolize the prevention of everything that could possibly go wrong. It's not a world I want to live in, or I don't think anybody else does. It's like, well, I've already wear a mask because you might make somebody sick if you happen to be sick or something. I mean, we can't justify things like that. It puts so much burden on everybody to proactively prevent everything. Then we forsake our life in order to preserve it. Well, Colby, it depends how well that's working out for you. You might just actually have a meth solution. Sounds like you get a lot of shit done. Oh, ENTJ meth habit, huh? 15 days no sleep. I would guess it would get weird. I can't even go 2 full nights without sleep without it getting weird. Yeah, that's all. I answer Sean's question. What might you gain from getting into Enneagram? There's nothing really to gain from it in the sense that it's not very deep. There's nothing more to say about it. It's just it's like, if you're 8, it means you tend to get mad when people prevent you from playing the way you want to, like I did at Lawnmower at first, because I came to play odd receiver of knowledge about this beautiful thing that I'd been tweaking out on, basically. So then when Lawnmower is like, I don't like this character. I was like, hold on. I'm about to begin a museum curator speech about how this is my favorite painting in the whole museum and it's so great. And blah, 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 blah. And here you are on the tour, and I'm playing tour guide, and you're like, oh, that painting's got that shitty part down there in the corner. Before I even began, so that's like basically that you could explain that as 7/8. I come here to play the way I want to play. Lawnmower starts playing a different way, and so I get mad and have a little dust up. You know, it explains.
That's a good way of calling it, a dust up.
Yeah. Yeah, Dustin Salisbury. Repost away. I don't remember ever critiquing anybody for reposting a thing that I didn't get respond to. I usually say thank you for, I saw that before. Thank you for posting it. I'm glad because I forgot about it. I guess that's commonly not liked in live streams, but I like it here.
I tag you in your TWFP Instagram.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad I have that. I didn't know I had that.
Uh-huh.
Do you think you could swing back around to what you were thinking regarding security and insecurity? Where it's coming from? Oh, yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think the 8th function is the area of insecurity. So if you really want to break a relationship with somebody, hammer them on their 8th slot function. In other words, critique them on that. Say, it's like, it's one of the reasons why my dad and I will, on some level, never have exactly a good relationship because he kind of judges me on my SE. Like, it's his 6th slot function, but he doesn't have the same relationship with 6th slot that I do with 6th slot because it's consistent with his 1st and 2nd, inconsistent with his 3rd. So it makes his 6th slot much more like his 3rd. But yeah, and that's the other question, Sean, that I'm not quite sure the answer to. I'm not sure how much this linkage is specific to me being having an action function in the 8th slot. I suspect the insecurity one is more likely to. Let's see if I guess, Sean, what that would mean is this, that as an ENFJ, you don't really have any problem linking to TE stuff. In other words, you have no problem saying, like, what's this question here? This question here says, it got reposted or asked again, says, whatever it said. I don't remember. Oh yeah, this is probably more to interface than an 8th slide is a bit more complicated. So that's sort of framing it back in towards of utility. But I was gonna say it's like insecurity does mean different things to different people. They can be insecure about how they're perceived, or they can be insecure about their real ability. So that's a good point, Sean. It's a really good point. I probably interpret insecurity through an FE 3rd slot frame. I feel insecure about how I'm perceived because it's in that slot and it's an absolute value. I don't actually really feel insecure about how I'm perceived, though. But what I'm saying is, and in terms of hierarchy relationship, well, that plays out on the SE level. So it's like, if I'm going to feel insecure about something, it's going to be about being manly enough, or my manliness in comparison to somebody else in relation to my significant other or something. It's going to link to SIFI like that. But that may have to do with the kind of functions I have in 3 and 8. So, well, okay. For example, in a relationship, there's typically some jealousy. Some jealousy comes into play, and what studies or something or somebody's theorizing has indicated is that jealousy occurs on 2 possible planes. Either people tend to be sexually jealous, that is to say, worried about other, like, their partner's sexuality being the weak link in the relationship or something. For in other words, like that you don't match up with previous partners or with alternatives out in the world for in your partner's eyes. That would be where sexual jealousy comes from. Whereas emotional jealousy says that you don't feel like you're going to have as much of an emotional connection with this person as with some other people. So sometimes you'll hear in media, I don't hear it in real life, but I hear in the media that somebody will cheat and the other person will say, I can't believe you did that to me. And the first person will say, it didn't mean anything. There was no emotional connection. Well, in that instance, you're looking at the second person, presuming that the first person is jealous of an emotional connection, and that's the kind of jealousy they have, and that as long as there was no emotional connection, that they can maybe get over the sexual infidelity because that's not where you're jealous or something. So the thing is, of course, that's ridiculous because people are not just emotionally jealous, they are sexually jealous as well. Everybody's a little bit of both, presumably. But I know, for example, that I'm much more sexually jealous than I am emotionally jealous. I don't worry about Rachel having some deeper connection with some other person than she has with me. A lot more. Okay, here's a basic question, though. Number one question that needs to be asked every time you say something like this: why does this apply just to women and not to men? Why?
What? What's he saying?
He says a girl who's been with multiple guys already loses her pair bonding capacity. Ay. If that's the case, then you're saying, once a girl's been out in the world for a while, she's basically damaged goods. Might as well just throw her out the window. She's never going to be successful in a relationship.
Yeah.
Women receive, not men. You mean because in sexual intercourse, women receive penis, therefore they can't pair bond with multiple people, but men give penis, therefore they can pair bond with multiple people? Because once penis reception has occurred by one penis, the vagina is unable to adjust to a new penis, whereas the penis doesn't need to adjust because what's the logic behind this nonsense? I think the capacity to pair bond successfully has everything to do with whether you were loved adequately as a child. If you were and you developed the capacity to meaningfully afford trust to another person, and you're seeking that, then you'll end up in a long-term relationship that's healthy. The thing is, most people, very few people, if anybody, can correctly say that they found the right person at age 22 and they stay with them the rest of their life, and there are no regrets, and it was clearly they were like soulmates or whatever you want to call it. Or almost nobody does that because people aren't done growing up until their 30s mid-30s. It's a bad straw man. I mean, hey, Horseman alert. I didn't straw man what Lawnmower said. I just posited what's the explanation here. I threw out some random shit. He didn't give me any explanations. I couldn't possibly straw man him.
I have a question. What does straw man mean?
Well, it would mean if I straw man Lawnmower, the Lawnmower made a more complex argument or a more nuanced argument, and I made a weaker or less nuanced version of it in order to knock it down. In other words, put up a straw man in order to knock it down. It means I'm not taking the opponent seriously. I'm putting up a fake opponent to make it look like I knocked down an opponent, right? That's absolutely not the case here because Lawnmower didn't make any justifications for it at all. I just humorously said, "What's the justification for this? Meowdy, meowdy, meowdy?" I'm not being politically correct. I did actually about might as well throw them out. I attributed those reasons to Lawnmower. Well, if I did, that's my bad. Sorry. Didn't mean to attribute them to him. Even if I did attribute them to him, it still wouldn't be a strong man. It would be falsely attributing to him arguments he didn't make at all, because I wouldn't be misrepresenting his arguments. He didn't make any.
No, they weren't. That wasn't an argument.
Etymology has to do with prize fighters beating up a literal straw man that was an effigy of their future opponent, I believe. Oh, interesting, Dustin. Interesting.
What he said?
He said the etymology of the word straw man has to do with boxers who used to, before a match, beat up a literal straw effigy of their coming opponent. In other words, a straw statue designed to look like their opponent.
Good to know.
Hmm.
So next time I want to look for a fight, I'll look for some hay.
I'm not politically correct or politically incorrect. I am. I believe. I don't believe that it's correct that women who have, or like every woman in the modern age, who have multiple sexual partners in their life, I absolutely do not think it's the case. They lose the ability to pair bond. I mean, my own experience would suggest it's not the case, because Rachel certainly seems able to pair bond, and the woman, my second wife, was, she had only had one boyfriend before me, and she got tired of me and left. Yeah, what is pair bonding? I mean, it's like, being in a committed relationship. Am I sure that Rachel's able to pair bond? I mean, the thing is, to the extent that you want the expression to mean something, pair bonding, and we want to define it as anything that's meaningful, then it's clear that she's successfully doing it.
With you.
Right. Pair bonding is much deeper than her relationship with me. So, okay, we've literally lived together for the beginning of this relationship in this one room. Now we have 2 rooms to live in for the last year, having sexual intercourse with each other exclusively of anybody else, not having sex with anybody else, spending all of our time together, traveling together,
going through ups and downs
together, having fights, resolving fights, dealing with problems that were actual real world problems, coming through the other side, etc.
Taking care of other people and helping out.
So where is the depth then, Lawnmower?
I just want to interrupt for a moment to tell you that Delilah says thank you for buying this for Zuko. It's a bunch of food.
Cool, thank you. So it's like, it's true though that pair bonding is deeper than just the external data points we can point to. That there's a same pagery that's required. And the thing is, I think the reason people have multiple sex partners is because of two reasons. Number one, because they not beating up on lawnmower tonight. He's I mean, look. So if he's correct, then everybody who's in a relationship, like say, gets into it in their 30s or something, is doomed to fail in their relationships. You know? But there's two reasons why people have a lot of partners. One of them is they don't want to settle into a relationship. And the other one is they proceed through a succession of relationships looking for the right one. So, and people try different approach. After you've tried a relationship for a few times, you think, hey, I'm gonna try to maybe just date for a while. And then you try relationships again, It is true. I don't doubt that the more people you date in the not looking to settle down area makes it increasingly difficult to settle down, because at that point you start passing by people who are potentially good people for you, right? So it matters why you have multiple partners. Like, there's BoJack, multiple partners, versus Mr. Peanut Butter, multiple partners. Mr. Peanut Butter, multiple partners is on his moving on to his fourth wife at the end of the thing until Pickles leaves. And is he single at the very end of the show? Do you remember? I think he's single at the very end of the show.
I think so too. That's I actually can't definitely say whether I know or not.
So
I think so too, because she gets together with someone. Yeah.
Alan Bryan, that's interesting. You mentioned that. Rachel and I, it's something where she and I don't exactly agree. Like I said to her the other day, wow, it's like Mr. Peanut Butter is such a likable character. I like him so much. And Rachel's like, Alan says, I don't like Mr. Peanut Butter. I think it's an INFJ thing because he's an ESFJ, and the INFJ is going to feel like their supervisee is, that's right, it's your supervisee. No.
We're supervisor of them.
Yeah, so they're your supervisee.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, employee.
The supervisee is going to it's going to seem like they're not so impressed by them, I guess you could say.
Well, that makes sense, right? Because then INFJ BoJack, like, he really does not like Mr. Peanut Butter.
I don't think he dislikes him. He just doesn't respect him at all.
Right.
Okay, so I think that's the thing. I don't think that Rachel and Alan dislike Mr. Peanut Butter. They just don't respect him at all. And they see him as bumbling stuff that requires more nuance.
He deserves what he gets in the end, too. I mean, like, he's so naive to the whole... There's stuff that... He's hurting people's feelings, and throughout, most of it is, like, getting no responsibility for, like, any of it. Until the end.
Okay, so you Mad Bro says, "Host Eric, what are your thoughts on open or cuckold relations?" Well, look, I know that kind of shit doesn't work for me. I suspect it doesn't long term work for really anybody, but I am hesitant to judge other people who say it does. It's like if I don't feel like I can win the argument against some open relationship people who insist that it's right for them. But I nevertheless will be highly skeptical that it is.
Does it truly make it a relationship?
I mean, this is the thing. What I'm saying is there are people in the world who will insist that their quote unquote open relationship is the best, healthiest imaginable thing for them.
Yeah.
And I won't be able to defeat that argumentationally. Like I can't meaningfully win the argument that they're wrong about their own experience like that. But I doubt that they will. I doubt that belief will withstand the test of time.
We're only getting their point of view too. Like you never hear about like the other people ever. Like there's this sex guru on Quora. Like he gets like 800 and something likes all the time because people will be like, what is it like to be in an open relationship, right? Because Quora has like a lot of like people asking simple questions that like want to get feedback on. So most of the people say like, you know, intimacy is a big part of relationships, blah blah blah. But like this dude is always like, you know, I live an open relationships lifestyle and it can be done. Like, if there are people who are in it who agree to the terms and are happy, that's their lifestyle. And like, he gets 108, but he sounds like he's like a sex guru. But the thing that pisses me off is that we never get the other person's side of it. Like, did they really? Like, how are they feeling now? Do you get any like calls from like people like from lovers past? Because I'm sure you do. Like if you get up to like that many people, like you're like affecting a lot of people's lives.
Right. But I mean, this is the thing. Hambone gets to the crux of the issue here when he says, if we understand sex as primarily a deep emotional experience between two people, and if a person engages in promiscuous behavior, then the shared bonding aspect to any given sexual encounter is lessened to the point where sex is physical action akin to masturbation, so the goal is morphed, right? So the thing is, you don't have to even understand sex as being primarily a deep emotional experience between two people. You can simply understand it as the physical component of a healthy emotional relationship is going to involve sex where both parties feel safe and comfortable and trusting. And that may or may not play out in the actual sex as a deep emotional experience or not. I don't know about that exactly. It's like it may be that, but it doesn't loom that large in my narratives about the relationship. Like I don't, when asked to explain why I'm emotionally connected to Rachel, it wouldn't occur to me until I would see the sex as a symptom of that rather than a cause of that. Although I do think it's important for us to have sex periodically to sort of re-up that connection or something.
I love it. I'm simple in that way. I think we have good connection, man. It wouldn't be able to last this long if we didn't.
Right. Yeah, sex is good for the health of a relationship for sure. That's true. And sex can be good for your health if it's healthy sex. It can be awful for you if it's not. So
We both know that. Which is good too.
do women ever push for sex or men primary drivers? Well, I don't know if Rachel's pushing for sex. I don't know. Yes, Rachel initiates sex sometimes, but I don't know if she's doing that because she's checking to see if I want to have sex, and then if I do, she does, or if she's actually initiating because she wants to have sex. Neither of us is very FI driven. We're both pretty FE driven. So I don't really know, and I don't really care because I'm FE third slot.
Thanks, babe. I'm so glad. I'm very satisfied. Like, can I brag? Like, I'm very satisfied. I'm very attracted to you. I feel lucky. And not only that, but sometimes there is FI involved, sometimes there isn't. And I really fucking like that.
Okay, yeah, and listen to this. And this is something I couldn't disagree with more. Alan Bryan quotes Woody Allen as saying, "I never had an orgasm I didn't like." That's absolutely not the case for me. There are some orgasms definitely that I don't like, have not liked in my life. Some, it's like you're all thwacked out and you've been fapping for 6 hours and you finally finish. That's not, you don't feel good about that. You're like, oh, whoopee, that was great. Now you're like, oh my God, what have I been doing for the last 6 hours? I mean, that's back in the day. It's like back when the amphetamines were methylized, but methylated, I mean, methylated. No, I understand, Sean O'Neill. I understand that Woody Allen was saying that for humorous effect and playing as self-deprecating, like, for me, anything is, I get it, but it's like it matters a lot how sensitive you are to meanings, how much weight you put on certain kinds of things. I'm very, very sensitive to meanings, and so is Rachel. So it's like we could never possibly be anything other than monogamous. It would require so much. I mean, we could have at the beginning been non-monogamously involved if we had set up the meanings accordingly, but even then, I don't know if that would have worked very long term, but it's like, I've always needed, certainty and finality in these things. I need to not have to think about what my relationship status is,
Wait, what do you mean? What would be okay in the beginning if we had set it up in the beginning?
Well, I'm saying I don't think that either of us could handle a non-monogamous relationship. Although, if it were possible, I suppose if we had at the very beginning, in other words, it's conceivable that we would have taken some time to settle into this relationship, though we didn't. But I'm saying it's conceivable that we could have and tried to set that up and might have worked for a little while or something, but I don't think it would have worked at all.
Oh my God, no fucking way. No offense to anyone, but like, and look,
Lawnmower.
With cheating and stuff, like, I'm just gonna say, like, I honestly, truly believe, and it doesn't have to be physical, it can be emotional too. The more people that are involved, the more complicated it is. Like, and it doesn't have to be physical. If you are on the phone with someone else right now, like, you're not really with me.
Right.
Like, the whole time, right? Like, if someone whacking off on your ear, like.
Right. I mean, to a certain extent, like when we're live streaming, even my attention is only somewhat on you when you're talking, and I've got the other things here. It's just the difference is there's nothing secret or sordid or sexual about this, so it's safe. It's just me interacting with the world, you interacting with the world. Sometimes we interact with the world like we're doing now, kind of concurrently about the same topic, and sometimes we sort of take turns interacting about our own topics, not following up on the thing from the previous person, which is all fine and dandy. But yeah, the fact is, you've got a certain amount of attention to give. How much of it are you giving to your significant other?
Yeah.
When and where and why, and in what context? It's like Rachel and I are able to feel as though we're giving attention to each other by watching the same show together, for example, or whatever it is. We end up talking about it afterwards, in which time we're actually giving attention to each other. But because we're FE types, probably, or maybe for some other reason, in watching something together is the same as, well, it's I guess the reason it seems weird to me is because I tend to think of spending time together as involving me being in some way, and that involves me putting information. It seems odd that people spending time together, both watching some third thing, and still be prioritized that they still be prioritized narratively that they are together spending time. But the fact is, we do enjoy that, and part of the reason why I enjoy it is we don't demand much of each other. Hambone.
What is he saying?
Well, he's a young man, so he's got lots of cum socks. Cum socks are. He knows it's time to wash the cum sock when it stands up on its own, like a modeled sock at Foot Locker on one of those feet.
Can I just say that I love that Mitch is surreal. Like,
What?
I mean,
The
like,
what is
even
surreal?
I, as a girl, like, growing up, like, watching media, knew about the sock. Like, and, like, actually hearing about it, it's like, oh my fucking God, it's so great.
Mark Dan, no, I would say that probably ISFPs have less obvious SE because their FE is much better than ISTPs. ISTPs are not that careful to not annoy people. They're kind of dicks. They tend to view TI fairness as justifying being really harsh. So it's not always the case, but forgiveness isn't high up in an ISTP's virtue matrix, I guess you could say. So I would say ISFPs are going to seem least SE-ish. Do INFJs ignore dry hands until they're bleeding? INFJs are not that SI bad, but I've seen Rachel plenty of times deal with her body through an NI frame by going like, this sensation in my body must be because of Mia or something. Yeah. Whereas it's like,
that's my negative emotion.
Yeah.
I totally Google that ish all night, babe. It's so dumb, but it suits me for some reason. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's the weirdest thing.
Sean O'Neill, you are such an ENFJ. This era of having multiple previous boyfriends is very damaging. I mean, look, the thing is, we're in an era where people live a lot longer than they used to. They grow a greater distance over the course of their life probably than they used to, in the sense that there's so much more information out there, so much more capacity to glean information. It's not right to say that people are better served to stay in the wrong relationship for longer. It's not correct. Now, you might have a point about like it's not healthy for people in general to sleep around a whole bunch with no intention of looking for a significant other. You might be right about that. But the thing is, I think you got to make that distinction at least, that as people get older, despite their best intentions, even no matter how relationshipy they are, and despite their best intentions about those relationships, it still takes two to tango. They don't necessarily end up with the right partners, and that may be a bad thing, but it's also just a human reality. It's not a good idea that we try to make them stay in those wrong relationships, and it's not a good idea that we condemn them as fundamentally broken for having failed to find the right person right away. It's also just not correct from my experience. So it's like, isn't valuing in and of itself and being able to detect closeness in relationships consistent with introverted ethics and socionics? I mean, I'm not a socionics expert, but yeah, it is. But that's proof right there of why it's bullshit, right? I do value intimacy, and I am very pro relationship. I don't know if I'm able to detect closeness particularly well, but I certainly can do that. It's difficult to say that I'm failing on an FI metric if that's how we're going to define it. So I don't think that's correct. There are different reasons that people. Good point, Oliver. There's different reasons why people value relationships. I mean, the thing is, I value having a long-term relationship so much for a couple of reasons. One, it means I don't have to think about that issue anymore, and that issue means I have to actually be in my emotions. So it's like when you're dating somebody and things aren't clear, then there's this emotional up and down that goes with it, and you don't know what you're supposed to feel. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this up. 3.5 hours. That's a pretty good amount of video here. Pretty good amount of talking out my meowity meows. Yeah, probably. Now, listen to this. This is what Sean says here. I value intimacy, but also value novelty of new experiences. There are many times I ultimately chose to fuck someone simply because no pussy like new pussy was the strongest factor. That is so 6-slot NE about sex. It seems to go along with my ongoing notion that 6-slot, is what you're looking for in sex. Okay, so when I'm partying, how many beers can I comfortably drink? Well, since I'm drinking O'Doul's, I could drink shit tons of them. But
me too. I don't have to pee a lot.
So, yeah. So I don't like any in my sex very much, like in the sense that I'm pretty predictable. Like I kind of want the same routine every time. It's not. I don't need a bunch of newness within a person, or certainly not between people. And that seems to follow from the 6-slot function thing. So, Eric, I saw a video of yours from like 4 years ago where you said you don't think emotional cheating is a real thing. You still hold that stance. No, I don't hold that stance. But I see emotional cheating as being fairly specific kind of thing. So emotional cheating means It's like, I mean, any kind of betrayal ultimately stems from you're making some third party the real end of your secrets. It's like they're the real one, the one they're really intimate with, because they know the truth, and this other person, you cheat on your husband, then your husband is no longer your intimate partner. It's the one you cheat with, because they're the ones who know the secret and you're the one who doesn't. So in that regard, you can emotionally cheat on people, but I think it does have to be kind of specific. Like, I think it's emotionally cheating to for like a woman to complain to a man about another man about her man, or in general, it's a challenge for me if Rachel's complaining about me to other people. Although, but that's specific to this, to post Kimberly, because I didn't like the idea of it or anything pre Kimberly, but Kimberly did so much of that to me, and I operated on the grounds of like, okay, well, I trust her to, she needs to talk about her own shit too. I don't police her private thoughts and conversations or whatever. And
When have I done that?
you haven't.
Oh, okay. It makes me sick to my stomach.
No, you haven't at all. No, you're perfect with that.
No.
I'm saying Kimberly did that.
Oh.
You gotta listen to all the words.
I love you.
I love you too. So yeah, Kimberly, by the time I was done with that relationship, I was done with that thing. And Rachel has been absolutely perfect about that. It's like she's I don't think she feels like she has lots to complain about, for one thing. It's like but if your partner is talking shit about you to some third party, that qualifies emotional cheating. If she's talking shit about you to a man, then that comprises like the next step is where it's just gonna go. So it's like if Rachel had her male friend Todd that she talked to, and she'd say, "Oh, well, oh, he's okay. He's, we're getting along okay, but he just doesn't really get me in the way that you do, Todd, emotionally. So that's why we're talking here." If it was like that, that would definitely be emotional cheating.
Can I so like Billy, like I just like put this together. He said his company ran from 2009 to now, and we were still dating at that point, and he was talking about this woman Diana who had glasses, and like I'm like, oh my god. That I like put two and two together. I was like, oh shit. Like he was mostly cheating, like then.
Oh, you think he was cheating?
I'm pretty sure they had an emotion. Yeah, he told me about her. Like he told me that they would go on like, and then like she would like buy him like a gift or whatever, and this was the one that I was like, Billy, like you have to be careful because like girls like you and like you are in a relationship, like they're sometimes girls aren't nice just to be nice. Sometimes they are nice because they have a crush on you.
Right. Well, did he end up getting with that chick afterwards or something?
Yeah.
So
they're not together now. But yeah, so but I just put it together.
His business just ended, or what?
They're not partners anymore. He needs a new camera person.
Or his woman is camera person, or what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Did I upset you?
no.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, I'm just looking at these things.
Sweet.
Did he try to contact you at all again?
No.
That's fine.
I-
I'm not stressed out about him.
I didn't think that's why I told you. I just made it, but like I just made that like connection and like
Word.
yeah.
So what's a minor red flag? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not jealous, you mad bro. I was thinking about whether to ask about that after I ended the stream or not, which is why I was saying such a long time, because I was thinking, I don't want to get into this thing here. I really am not very jealous in this instance. I am certainly subject to jealousy, and that's great. But in this instance, I don't feel very jealous. Because I'm just referencing the fact that, Rachel alerted me to the fact that her ex-boyfriend from a long time ago, like, it's not her most recent ex-boyfriend or anything, but I had just basically said, hey, what's up, or something on Instagram. And so, it's like in a good relationship, people inform each other of shit that's even questionable a little bit, No, I'm not worried about. Here's the thing. The reason I'm not worried about Rachel's ex-boyfriend is because I'm not worried about Rachel at all. So I trust her to completely keep me in the loop about any time that he were to contact her or anything. I don't worry that she's particularly susceptible to seduction. I think she's quite. I think she's as happy with her relationship as I am.
I really am. It's a big deal. Like, I told my grandma McCurgan, because my grandma was like, you moved to California, like, why? To be with a boy, like, why? And I was like, Grandma, I love him. Like, so easily, like, there was just, like, no question, no doubt, like, I love you and I love this relationship and it's the best one that I've ever been in. Yeah.
So, as a consequence, I believe her when she says that. I know that we're really super compatible, and I don't mind talking this stuff out at all. I appreciate you prompting the conversation. It's like having been in so many failed relationships before and understanding that it really, we make all these sort of general rules about what correlates more or less with success. But I think that the reality is what correlates with success is the right person, and everything else correlates with varying degrees of failure. Didn't we two just instantly hit it off? I mean, yeah, sort of. But you got to remember that, like, she knew me before I knew her. Like, she'd been watching the channel for a while, so I think that things might have gone more slowly if I was trying to pick up on her at the library or something, and she'd never heard of me before, had any experience with me. She would have been more cautious with me probably. But I think it was almost like I had done a lot of work ahead of time, even though I hadn't done it at all. She had just watched some videos. So just watching some amount of videos of me is doing a lot of pre-work for a relationship that allowed me to move faster than I might otherwise been able to, and things to move faster. But it was very much that word what's that word that I learned from Becky about? Limerence. This state of like obsession about the other person. I have no idea what you're talking about, Sean. Yeah, I agree. Nothing kills a relationship like lying. But I'll say that, you know, like that's an INFJ thing too, because I was able to put up with a certain amount of certain kinds of lying from Kimberly. It didn't necessarily. It's like if you would have asked me about the question as a general rule, I would have sided with your position on this. Absolutely. And then I was in a relationship with somebody who wasn't very. I mean, I realized the ESFJ same thing. If I was really checking for whether or not they're telling the truth, it's like ESFJs they work fast and loose with words and the truth. Their impression is what really happened, even if it's not. And so it's like I'm a little bit more forgiving in that regard, probably than INFJ ever will be. But it's a totally different world being with an INFJ. Like, it's not possible. It's not possible, for example, that I could tell a lie 6 months later, contradict myself and reveal that lie, and the INFJ not know that. So it's like in the same way ENTPs are about argumentation. Wait. But since 6 months ago you argued that the reason was isn't that contradicting now? That's how ENTPs do it, but INFJs do it about honesty stuff. So it's like they'll remember that you told your dad that you weren't going to meow, and then months later you mentioned meow, and so it's the shit that isn't relevant to arguments. They'll still remember whether you're telling the truth or not. To them, it's incredibly important that you be honest with them because they're knowers. They're receiving information. They want to know they can operate on the assumption that the information they're receiving is not willfully misleading them. It's one thing they accept and understand that a lot of people are telling their own truths, that they don't really understand universality. But what INFJs don't like is the attempt to deceive. That's the key thing to lying as far as INFJs goes, the attempt to deceive. All right, it's time to wrap this up. It's 10 p.m. Thanks for being here, everybody. And don't forget, whatever you do, don't forget to eat, play,